Okay, now we're on TV. All right. Good evening. This is the Newmarket Budget Committee, December 17th meeting, 2012 at 6:30 p.m. We're going to start the meeting. I do know that Judy Ryan indicated she's sick, so she will not be here tonight. She's going to make sure we don't get sick, so we hope she feels better. And the first item is to do a Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation,
under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, so Dr. Hayes is here along with Christine Bluen and some members of the school board and staff. And this is our first detailed overview and discussion of the school's budget for fiscal year 13-14. Yes. I'm assuming that since the minutes went out today that that people didn't read them, but if we wanted to take a motion on them. Did they get sent out? I sent them out today, I thought.
Yeah,
Because I got them.
I didn't get mine.
Okay. Thank you for the reminder. I'll put it on for next meeting. 10 minutes. Okay, so Dr. Hayes sent out, well, he forwarded me what he thought he would cover tonight, which I forwarded on to you all late Friday or this morning. And it was, the reason it's not on the agenda is because it was sent to me after I think Kathy got the agenda up, so. But elementary school budget, and then focus on the technology request for both schools, and recommended article for the warrant, and then go through the budget as far as we can the first night, and then proceed on to the rest of it at the other meetings we have. A quick, good overview?
Yep. It is.
And Russ also asked that you do a quick recap of the overall situation, I think. Is that right?
Yeah, I was just trying to, you had given us a little bit of the overall numbers and also an update on Durham, so we have some framework with discussions, those ours as we get into this, because everything is interconnected.
Okay, well, let me start with the update on Durham before I jump into the budget then. There really is no further news except that they did determine, Oyster River School Board did determine that there would be no room for our middle school students. And so we're purely looking at a 9 through 12 arrangement, and so we've agreed to start meeting on that. I have sent some tentative dates over to Oyster River and have not heard back from them just yet. I know they're trying to set it up on their side. I have invited the high school principal to come and present to us at a meeting. I think it's going to be the second one in January, but I'm still finalizing that. But there's really nothing more than that. The only thing definitive is no middle school.
Which for us would just mean the 6 and 7.
6, 7, 8. It's a 6, 7, 8. Yeah, I mean it's a different concept to where we've been studying, because if you tuitioned high school to Oyster River, then you still have to still have 6, 7, 8 then in the current facility, and the question is, how do you deal with all of that? We've not wrestled with that question. Okay, to give some overview then, let me, I'll back up a few pages here. You all have this salmon-colored booklet here. On page 4 is where I really give the overview of this budget proposal. And the budget is shown on page 4 in two different ways, both by the different functions, which is one mechanism for how we budget, and then also by the object codes. The object codes may mean a little bit more to you. It shows salaries, benefits, equipment, supplies, and so forth. But in either case, obviously, it comes up with a requested budget of $14,843,617, which represents a 2.84% increase over the FY13 budget. On page 5, I take the object amounts and I put it in a pie chart so that you can see better how our money is spent in our budget, and we are very much a staff-intensive operation with salaries representing 54% and then the benefits 27%. So you have basically, what is that, 81% of our budget is all in salaries and benefits. When we began our budget, we went for a level program budget, continuing all of the programs that we currently have. That left us with about just under a 5% increase over where we are now. And so we decided we needed to pare that down, we being the administration and school board, and pared it down to the 2.84%. In paring it down, we had to cut some positions, which I'll speak to in a moment. At the bottom of page 5, again, what's part of the overview are things that drove that 2.84% increase. The retirement system is clearly the biggest one, and I know you've met with the town council, so you've seen it on the town side, that the rates went up tremendously, and that is a very big cost factor for us. And then these others, I know I did an overview for you then. If you got any specifics, I'll answer those. But there are things that are greatly out of our hands that drove the budget up by nearly 3%.
Question?
Go ahead, Russ.
Just two things. The ratio of benefits to salary is about 50%.
Yes.
Is that consistent on the teacher side as well as the non-teacher side, or is there a breakdown between the two that should be?
I don't have specific data, but, I mean, that's the overall. I would say because they're all insured with health insurance. Health insurance is the biggest part of benefits, that certainly it's a bigger percentage of salary for the lower people on the low salaries. So the classified employees that take health insurance, it's going to appear very different than administrators that take health insurance.
And you had mentioned last time that though there was a negotiation for a lower health care rate, that's not yet in the budget.
That's correct, yes.
And that was around 350 to 500,000?
I don't think it was that, but,
It's about $345,000.
okay.
That's about the most information I can give at this time, because it's part of negotiations.
Understand.
Yeah, let me give you an update on that. We're still meeting. In fact, we have some scheduled for tomorrow, 10 o'clock tomorrow. And so we're still trying to reach an agreement.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Amy?
Continuing on that, do you think that it would be possible to show a projected savings in that health insurance line for this budget? Going forward, based on, it sounded like at the meetings that I've attended, that teachers had basically, I guess, informally approved the school care plan. And given X likelihood that this will go through and be able to be done, I'd certainly like to see a projected savings in that health insurance line item
No.
and come right off your budget
I
at the top.
understand that, but the change in health insurance is linked to the rest of the collective bargaining agreement. So we have to wait until we settle the entire agreement before I can do anything. I really can't, I can't make a change in the operating budget because I haven't settled a contract.
Is that something that there's time to do based on when negotiations are happening?
I think realistically, I think the answer there is realistically no, because they are tied together.
Right.
They will exist in a separate warrant article from the operating budget.
Okay.
So they'll be linked together in that separate warrant article.
Is that one of the warrant articles that we already have seen?
In
Written up?
I gave you a set of a draft, and there's one in there that's a very specific wording for approval of a multi-year collective bargaining agreement.
Okay.
And you have to list the costs for each year. And in this case, health insurance is a piece of that warrant article, not a piece of this operating budget warrant article.
Sorry, just one more. So let's say this happens, let's say that goes through, there is a savings, is the warrant article to be crafted to return that savings to the bottom line operating budget,
Yeah, I don't,
or to be held as a surplus, in which case
Certainly
other
makes
warrant
sense. I'd rather not
articles will say,
comment
well, out of
specifically.
this savings, do you
Yeah.
want it to go X, Y, and Z and not back to the tax rolls?
We can't comment on that because it's part of negotiations.
right, so I'm
Our
trying to figure
hands
out
are
how to say
really
it.
tied. It's,
Yeah.
you have great questions, but until we actually draft that warrant article, until we get to a certain step with negotiations, we can't comment any further than.
What you're saying.
Understood,
What you're saying
but
makes
that's
sense.
something that I'd like to,
It
I'd
certainly
like to
makes
see.
sense. but-
Absolutely.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
True.
I'll speak directly to Amy in an effort to avoid
Conflict?
asking any questions, I'll say. Historically speaking, what has happened is there's a warrant article, in this case it's number 5, the draft version
Okay,
is number
thank
5. Any reductions or increases are reflected in that warrant article, and the costs for each year that are covered under the contract are spelled out. So it would be reflected in that warrant article.
So to read in between the lines, if the negotiations produced an agreement that had $100,000 in increases in salary and the $350,000 decrease in expenses for healthcare, then the overall change would be $250,000, and there'd be $250,000 in the operating budget that would be available for other purposes. If the budget is passed the way it is right now.
And that's what
But
that's what I'm
if
saying,
the-
it wouldn't come off the bottom line of the budget.
Not the
to
way that
start.
traditionally they've been written. But if the other changes, if they balance each other out in those negotiations, then there would be no impact from the contract. So you'd basically
Right.
have been assuming that by addressing other challenges that the contract has.
Okay.
Am I misspeaking? Unless
Sounds accurate.
unless it's written
agree?
correct.
No,
Unless it's
that's
written in
correct.
such a
Well,
complicated,
if
but I'm not even sure you can write it that way because of the way state law tells you have to talk about.
DRA, you have to
contracts.
represent all,
Yeah.
whatever the
Right,
term of the
under-
contract is. You have to
understood.
show all costs.
Well, if there's any surplus, if it's a warrant article, it has to be rewritten as another warrant article to rescind those funds somewhere else, wouldn't it? Are they not holding to the same regulations of the council in that regards?
I don't know. I think it'd be better if we
But I do
hopefully
understand
see it
what you're
before
saying.
the absolute deadline. Russ?
I'm sorry to harp on this, I just want to understand it, because it's a fairly large chunk of money, and what you're suggesting to me, at least for the teachers, which are under the contract, is that they're tied together. So if whatever comes out in the warrant article, if it's defeated by the people of the town and they say it's not approved, then you're saying the teachers will stay with the old healthcare insurance because the warrant article was defeated and that savings and that agreement is null and void because it's tied to whatever else is in that warrant article?
That's a possibility.
I understand, it's, from a budget perspective, it's
That is
not
what
a-
would happen, Russ.
unless it changes, okay? Or a further question to that would be, this only covers the teachers. Okay, so I'm assuming the healthcare savings you mentioned of 345 includes the entire budget and not just the teacher portion, or is that untrue? I'm just trying to,
That is not true. 345,000 represents the collective bargaining members only. There is additional savings that is in the budget, and it's remained in the budget for purposes for the Affordable Care Act that has taken place in January 1 of 2014. We would be looking at some penalties because we don't offer insurance to all of our employees at a rate that does not exceed 9.5% of their household income. Okay, so I don't know if you want me to go into further and to explain the Affordable Care Act, but what we have to do is we have to budget for those penalties, that if it does happen, we're looking at about $60,000 in penalties that we could face.
but in the budget now, that in the operating budget we're seeing, there is a savings as a result of the
It's about 100.
non-teachers?
It's 110,000 for all non-teachers, non-collective bargaining.
And that's in the numbers now, in that variance that's
That
409?
We did not reflect the savings. The 110 that we may possibly save if we switch insurance is not reflected.
It's not reflected. It's
Budget.
currently
But-
in the budget for a few items. One, if we have increased participation. Two, for the affordable
Okay, wait, hold on a
care.
second. Let's not use the words, what's in the budget? Because you're going back and
Is
forth
the cur-
about the
what's in
terminology.
What's in the budget
Is the
right now
current
is the
contract.
current
Current
contract.
Current
Current
insurance.
contract.
Is in the budget.
That's clear enough.
That's right.
Got it?
For the non.
For everybody.
Everybody.
She's in everybody.
Everybody.
What
Correct.
So
Christine
the-
is saying is if the health insurance the change goes through, then,
There's possibly $455,000
right,
of total savings.
and we have,
Correct.
Which
have-
some of it has to be
to have-
used to
we
pay
have
any
some
penalties,
plans for
which
that
makes
money.
sense.
Which
To
is
keep it
why-
in there rather than get hit at a later date.
Correct.
I think that's great planning right there.
And that's all I was trying to just find out, is
Absolutely.
what
Nope.
the size was in the but the 110 wouldn't necessarily be part of the warrant article, because that's for
That's
the
correct.
That's
union. Okay.
That the
it would
warrant
only be,
articles,
warrant article would be the collective bargaining agreement for the teachers.
Strategic move.
So but the thing that everybody has to understand is if the article, whatever it has in it fails and there's no contract, it's the existing contract again stays in place.
correct.
So you cannot change the health insurance program without the consent of the union.
The union.
That's
I
a
say yes, that is the specific result of
Oh, right.
defeating that article. However, there's another warrant article,
Right, you could do another vote.
and you
but-
can do another meeting, and maybe there are other ways to get that done.
Okay.
So, but that,
Gary?
I think Rosie was before me.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's okay.
So, from what I understood, it could be a possibility of 455, 345, which would be only from the collective bargaining group, and 110,000, which you still, that 110,000 still has not been taken off this bottom budget line. You still have it in there.
Correct.
Even though you are anticipating with the changes you are making, that there will be $110,000 savings?
If everything goes to plan, if it does, if the new contract, if we change health insurance providers, there's an additional $110,000 savings that we could reap from that. And we're keeping it in the budget for the purposes of increase in participation in the Affordable Care Act, which we're looking at anywhere from $60,000 to $65,000 in penalties.
So you're tying this $110,000 savings to whether or not the collective bargaining passes? Basically is what you just said.
Yes.
But why do you have to do that when the $110,000 is not for collective bargaining? It's two separate entities. Can't you just go out to a different insurance
I
agent?
cannot. I can only have one insurance
carrier?
provider. So it's a all or nothing.
And in the share of the proportion that the employees pay, with this sheet here that we got, that we
Correct.
sent out, am I correct in assuming that the highest employee share is 15%
That's correct.
and then 11%?
Correct.
Could you keep the same insurance with the non-collective bargaining people for $110,000 and just increase their deduction to 20%, which is the norm to do? And that might save some money there.
But that's the norm.
Yeah, when you say the norm, what is that?
Where do you get that as the norm?
If you look at private insurances, nobody gets this type of
So you mean
health
compare it
insurance
to the private sector?
compared to the
Okay.
private sector.
Well, not
Is
comparing
that a
to private.
possibility that you would be willing to look at?
We'd have to look at that in the future because there are agreements, there are contracts that people have multi-year contracts, so we can't just unilaterally change that next year for July 1. That's something we'd have to negotiate individually with everybody's individual contract.
Thank you.
Gary, I believe?
Just changing gears briefly for my own clarification. On page 4, I just want to make sure I got the years straight in my mind. When it says last year's actual, is that last year being 2011?
11, 12.
11, 12.
Okay, so that's 11, 12.
Yeah.
which just obviously ended.
Correct,
Correct.
in June.
In June.
And when you say current year revised, is that the year we're in right now?
Correct.
Which would really be last year's
Approved
budget? Okay. Well, but there's a difference. It says, the column before that says current year approved
Correct.
versus current year revised. Okay, so does current year approved means, what's the difference?
It's just reallocation of the funds. That's it. It's the same budget. It's the same pot of money.
Yeah.
But we reallocated some of the funds.
And current year revised is the year we're in right now?
Correct.
Okay, which is 12-13, which hasn't obviously ended yet.
Correct.
Okay. And I just had a couple of quick questions on that line, since we're on that page. Is it okay to ask? Okay. Just a couple, like, for example, staff development. It's in the first section, about, I don't know, 7 down. I was just curious. It had 138,000 for the budget for 11-12 actual. See where I am?
Yep.
And then this year, I guess 12-13 was 195. And I was just wondering, there were like 3 or 4 of those that I was just curious about. Maybe you could explain why they went up. That was one. And then 2 down was technology, went up about, 15 or 20%. And then in the middle section, where it's got the benefits, now I'm assuming the benefits, does that also wrap in health insurance, et cetera?
Correct.
So that was, the year prior, I guess, was 3.5, and then it went to 3.73. So that was up a couple $100,000. And then the only other question I had was, I take that back, 2 other questions quickly, was supplies, was the actual was 586 and 11-12, and it went up to 620, which is, about 10%. And then the last one was the health insurance that went up 1.9 to 2.1. So I was just curious if there was a reason for those increases.
Sure. I'll start with the staff development.
Yep.
The staff development, that's your actual, that's what we paid out in the current year. We contractually, in the teacher's contract, we have to budget a certain amount. Say, I think it's 16,000 per the location. So that's why we have to budget such the high difference, because it's part of the obligation. If everybody were to use course reimbursement or tuition workshop reimbursement, we'd have to pay it out in full. So we budget for that in case, expect the worst. So that's why the difference is there.
Okay, so just for clarification, the year that, last year, 11-12, you spent, I guess it spent 138.
Correct.
174 was budgeted,
Correct.
correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so 138 was the number that was actually used. Then there was an approved budget of 184, but then they revised it to 195, and, it's a fairly significant increase after having spent 138, and so what happens to that money, just for my own edification, if you don't use it? Is it fungible?
It goes to the surplus. It goes to fund balance if I don't use it.
Well, or it's usable for any purpose.
Or it's fungible?
Correct.
Okay. Okay,
That
so.
goes for every line item in the budget.
That's correct.
Yeah, I understand.
So let's just keep that in mind for future questions.
Just,
Okay.
And that's why you'll see, that's why we do a revised, so you can see, like, for an example, you can see, like, what I requested is obviously a little bit lower, because we try to go off of last year's actuals unless it's contractual, and staff development is very contractual. So you might have had an administrator that utilized tuition agreement, might have taken a couple courses or something, so we budget for that. But we try to be, cognizant of that if we can be.
okay, technology?
Technology, There's one thing real quick. Technology, the increase for that would be that we had a contract that's for like our Earthlink. I know that's a very,
That one.
yes, I know that's a very touchy subject, but Earthlink, for example, is a substantially more expensive contract that we've entered into, that we're locked into. So that falls under to the technology department, because that's where we're charging it to. Same thing with the internet, because that's part of Earthlink. So that's the justification to have that increase. And then if there was any other contracts for outside services for technology, that's what it'd be for.
Okay.
Checked out non-appropriation that we talked about last time?
Yeah, that doesn't work very well because we don't own the phones, so we'd have no phones if we did the non-appropriation. Because we lease the phones through Earthlink as well.
No, I know what you did, I used to be in the business.
Okay, Gary, let's keep answering Gary's questions, because we
just-
need to get on to the details of the department, of the different schools.
Okay, benefits, again, that would just be, it changes from a single plan to a family plan, vice versa, somebody taking insurance, not taking the insurance.
Wait a minute, that's under the bottom one where it says health insurance. The benefits under salaries it can't be health insurance, is it?
The
That's the
object
breakout.
section is
That's
just
the
a different
breakout.
breakout of the same information.
Oh, so benefits,
Benefits is New Hampshire retirement, FICA, unemployment comp, health insurance, dental,
okay.
long-term disability. It's a pool of
Okay,
everything.
so health insurance is just part of that number.
Correct, and then the breakout down there would just show you that same, the increase is mostly for those changes that we have to
Okay,
contractually pay.
okay, thank you.
Is that all of them?
Did I get all of them?
Yeah, well, you basically answered the last one, too. They were, they were about 7 or 8% increase on the benefits, so I was just asking for clarification.
Yeah, Gary, if you look at the, that bottom benefits chunk, if you look at the bottom lines there, they're reflected in the table above. So, it's clearly broken out what's in that: health insurance, dental insurance, life insurance, long-term disability, employee assistance, wellness, FICA, retirement, unemployment, workers' comp, course reimbursement.
So the grand total at the bottom of the page is the same as the second line of the second table object.
I get it.
Okay. That's for everybody.
Yeah.
You ready,
On that-
Russ?
Well, no, the course reimbursement, I'm assuming, is part of that training budget we went over, but not all of it. If the training, the training budget that we just went over was $184,000, and on the
Yeah, that's
bottom it says
certainly
course
not all of it.
reimbursement is
all of
only
Gary, you have to
45.
remember the state increased the mandatory retirement contribution.
No, I
Health
wasn't.
insurance goes up by a couple percent, so there you start to, someone gets married.
No, I was talking about the staff development was up 30%. I wasn't talking
Oh,
about
okay.
the health.
Yeah, that's controlled by contract, too.
Correct.
President?
One quick question, because the staff development is controlled by negotiations, collective bargaining, why do we see such a high increase in it? Wouldn't it stay at the same dollar amount?
No, it's not all under the collective bargaining agreement. Teachers do get the vast majority of it, but administrators and other employees are also privy to that same benefit.
Okay.
Not contractually.
Some of them
No,
are.
yes, they
Some
are.
of them
Yeah.
are.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
Like the superintendent has a contract.
like
principals
I
have
do
a
for an
contract.
example.
Okay, are we ready to go on to?
Yes.
Elementary school,
Okay.
page 10. First, call your attention to the chart at towards the upper half of page 10 that shows the projected enrollment. It's very easy in elementary school to take a look at the enrollments and then translate that into how many staff you need, and you can see that the principal has done that. You can also see that what we perceived a couple years ago as a bubble, which is now in grades 4 and 5, if you look back at the enrollments for grades 1 and 2, you can see it's not a bubble. We are seeing the modest increase in enrollment that was predicted a couple years ago. But you also see the class sizes that we're using, and you can see that there's a net no change in staffing. So we're not asking for any additional teachers to deal with any enrollment gains there. But it's the same number of teachers, just reassigning one from third grade to fifth grade, essentially. The budget is organized by function. So on page 11 is the 1100, which is our regular ed series. Again, so much of this is salaries and benefits, and you can see that there. The 1100, the 112 object, we have 32 teachers, a 31.5 FTE, full-time equivalent. The district technology integration specialist positions in here, was in here, it used to be included in this, but now it's in the SAU. One of the things that we did, for a number of years, the approach to building a technology budget had been to distribute the technology expenses at all three cost centers. And I think that disguises, not that it was done purposefully, but it's really hard to grasp what are we spending for technology. And so my philosophy in creating this budget has been, if it's an expense that carries across all of the schools, then we put it in the SAU budget. So you're going to see technology in the SAU budget going up, technology in these school sites going down.
Question?
Yep.
I am raising my hands. Where is preschool as a part, is that in the
It's amongst
elementary
those
school?
32 teachers. If you look at the elementary enrollment, you see on the left in that chart on page 10, see where it
Right.
says early childhood,
Pre-K.
pre-K.
Like that.
Pre-kindergarten, in other words, is preschool, and then half-day kindergarten.
Okay, and so as far as the expenses, we would just take a ratio in general, would that get us close?
That's a regular ed expense, yes. So the teachers are embedded in here, and when we get to supplies, all of the supplies that go to that program are in here.
Is it possible to get a pre-K number as something as a follow-up item?
What pre-K number you, just be a little bit more specific.
I would, just looking at what the cost of the program was, we had discussed last time that in theory, it's not required, but it is required for special ed, but it's not required for others, and I was just interested in a self-funding.
Let me explain that, because I
Well, hold on. So I think what he wants is, what is the cost of the pre-K program?
Yeah.
And how much money is brought in from people who tuition for it? That's simple. That's what you want.
we don't have that, but we can get you
Right,
that.
right. We understand you don't have it right now. I wasn't expecting that.
Yeah.
I just want to,
All right,
because I mean, we don't need to hear the whole rehash of it.
Okay.
I think that's what he's looking for to
Okay.
understand. I do think we understand that there are certain ones that you have to provide it, and the other
Right.
ones are optional. You've explained before, we've heard it 3 times
Yes.
now, that it makes your educational philosophy and financially it makes sense to tuition in, because then you mix the students and you have better performance.
and they're really not even optional. They're really, it's a necessary part of their IEP, that they be in with typical peers.
So is that what you want
We
of us?
we can get you
I'd
that.
just like to
All
understand the
right.
cost and the revenue, yeah.
And Linda?
And I just,
Your hand was up.
and I just wanted to say one thing real quick, because there's been discussions about a preschool program that the rec department can offer versus what we're doing, and I think there's confusion as to, that's a moneymaker for the rec department, why are we spending money on pre-K? So I know most of us understand that, but I think that that's a discussion that Russ, that maybe you can have with Jim to get a little more,
Right, rather than here.
what our pre-K program is.
Yeah, I have nothing other than trying to find out what the facts of the revenue and the
get
costs
it.
are first before we have a discussion on it. But we have discussed here that there seem to be a lot of places in town that are putting together preschool to offset or different timing than the preschool in the school. There's an offset program in the rec department. And I'm just trying to find out what the
Okay.
numbers are and then whether they're self-funding or there's a large gap. It's just information.
Roseanne, I think. has
A question, what you sent out here,
Yes?
was this all the special eds for the IEPs, or was this?
Where it
just-
says IEP, that's a student in that class that has
So
an
this
IEP.
because I had asked for the classes and how many students and so forth.
That's what we gave
That's
you,
what
yes.
this is.
That's
And
right.
Is the IEP students are listed here.
Yes, that's right.
Okay, but then,
So
you
you can
have
see.
IEP, then you have MF, male, female,
Male, female, yeah,
and then the total.
total.
Okay,
And then within that total, some of them have IEPs in some classes.
very good. So I had a quick question then. I noticed under pre-kindergarten, you do have for instance, Julie Cooper. Julie Cooper teaches morning, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and then afternoon, Tuesday, Thursday. Why doesn't she teach morning and afternoon, Monday through Friday? Why does she teach just 3 half morning days and 2 half afternoon days?
Yeah.
I'm going to defer that to Jean Parsons. Jean?
She's the lead teacher in some of the classes and the secondary teacher in some of the classes.
Can
you come to the microphone?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yep. Identify yourself.
I should know this. I'm Jean Parsons. I'm the Director of Student Services. Julie Cooper is the secondary teacher in some classes and the primary teacher in others. For case management purposes, they're listed that way, so that although she's not listed as the main teacher in the morning, that may be because Ann Kochi, her co-teacher, is the case manager for the students in the morning. It may be swapped. And Ann they also do child find for us, which is a federal requirement, where they test new incoming preschoolers. They try to find children who are 2.5 and up who may need services, children from early supports and services, which is a required program that the school doesn't fund, but the state does. Those children, as they turn 2.5, we have to test them and write IEPs and bring them in if they qualify, so Julie also serves that function.
And that's a state mandate?
It's state and federal,
State and federal?
yes.
So is Julie Cooper effectively in a classroom for the whole workday or nearly the whole workday? Because
She's in the classroom,
co-teaching?
yeah, except for she's got a morning a week where she does testing, but the rest of the time she's in a classroom. And it's the same thing with Ann Kochi.
Yeah, thanks.
Gary?
2 quickies. Are we still on page 11, sort of?
Yeah.
Good. Wellness activities. This is just for my own curiosity. The actual for 12 was 474. Then 13 was approved 7,500. And we spent, I guess, 4768. And I was just wondering, is there any reason it would have gone up from $474 to almost 5,000? And it was budgeted for 7,500?
Go ahead.
Sure, I'll
You-
take that one.
go ahead, yeah.
That's a great question. It was a formality for budgeting purposes, the 7,500. The 7,500 here is in the wellness activities in the 100, which is the elementary, and it's also 7,500 at the high school. So it's $15,000 total. And then what I did is that I revised it. That's why we had the revised budget. If you look, it says 4768. That's what she has for a budget to work with for supplies, for activities, supplies, everything like that. And if you go up a little bit to wellness salaries, that 2,100, that pays for her salaries. It was all lump sum in that 7,500, and that's the proper breakout that she has provided us with the budget of how she's going to spend those funds. It's the same thing for the high school as well. Just a reallocation of that.
Okay.
The budget was also frozen last year, so when that happened, that also needs versus wants kind of happened throughout the budget process, so she didn't spend her money as she would have liked to because of the budget freeze.
Okay. Okay. And then just below it, scholar supplies. Last year, actual was 40. Then this year was approved 91. And then it was revised, I guess, to 40. And now it's 79?
I will.
Just thought I'd ask.
Yeah. When you look at those columns, let me just give you as an example. Take a look at the line below it. See textbooks, 30,700, and then 20,200, and then 0, and then the revised figure. What happened prior to this year is that principals, through building the budget, actually budgeted amounts in different line items. Example, scholar supplies, textbooks, replacement furniture. There are lots of places throughout the budget where it was actually budgeted in accounts. This past year, we said we're going to go to a site-based management approach. We're going to give the principal a lump sum amount and then deal with that lump sum amount later when they get closer to the year, because it's very hard for them to predict now what their needs will be in the fall or almost a year from now. And so you see the 91,642, that is actually less than if you summed up all of the operating accounts that the principal had control over. In fact, I think we may have reduced it by somewhere around $10,000 or $5,000 to $10,000.
I apologize, where'd you come up with the 91,6 whatever?
You were referring to scholar supplies.
Yeah,
And in the third column, you see the 91,642.
yeah,
All right, so what happened this year is the principal was given $91,642 and told, you can divvy that up any way you want to meet the needs of your school.
mm-hmm,
Okay? And what you see in the FY13 revised column is how it was divided up. He needed $40,000 in supplies, he needed $25,000 in textbooks, he needed $250 in tech software, $2,500 replacement furniture, and if that $91,000 gets spread all around the budget in other accounts, be it special ed or enrichment, library, media, and so rather than having it all over the budget, the initial proposal said 91,642 and left all the other accounts blank. And then when it was time, it was approved budget, and working with the business manager, the principal said, here's how I want to spend my money, and it got revised budget, got reallocated. And we did the same in this year, except instead of staying with the 91,642, we cut it back to $79,934. And when this budget, if that gets approved, then the principal say, okay, here's how much money I've got, and then go and spend it to meet the school's needs.
okay.
Okay?
Yeah, well, that makes more sense.
Yeah.
If you looked, and I'll leave it at this, if you looked at the actual of 63, so you're really going from roughly 63 to roughly 80. In other words, the actual of, if you aggregate all the last year actuals, 40, 20, 12, 10, 10.
But that's also, you have
But-
to,
but
there's
it-
different functions that make up
It gets,
that 91.
it gets spread up in other pages, too. For example,
Yeah.
he'll give money to the library, give money to the ESOL program and special ed. So it gets allocated all over the budget,
Okay,
not just on this page.
okay.
Okay.
It's hard to,
It
It's
is
very
hard.
hard.
It is hard. But again, a year ago, it wasn't 91,000, it was more than that. It was approaching 100,000. We cut it back, now we've cut it back again. And it's a lot easier to deal with when you're in a cutting mode, to simply then say, all right, what have I got? And then decide how you're going to distribute it.
okay, so just in closing, I just want to be clear, so when I add up the actuals from basically, account number, bear with me, I just want to line it up, 610 down. When I add up the actuals, which is roughly 63,000, call it 64,000, just to make it easy, and now it's 80 that's being requested, which isn't it's 17 grand, so it's not, it's more the principle. I want to understand this. You're saying it's really not 63 to 80, because it's 63 to 80, but there's other pages that this is on as well, so,
Let me try and give you one example to help you with that. Turn to page 15.
okay.
Okay? Down below in the narrative, you see the first line there? It says the health office, this is the nurse's office, and she receives funds for supplies and equipment repair through the building operating budget, the scholar supplies. So again, the principal gives money to the nurse for her needs as well in the health office. So now if you look at the top on 15, at the very first line in that chart, you'll see the FY13 approved this year was 0, but the principal gave just over $2,000 for running that office for all supplies and equipment. So the proposal for 14 still says 0. But when the budget gets approved, he's going to distribute money to the nurse's office, and that happens throughout the budget.
It's hard to line up the budget that way, to really correlate it to anything.
That's true. I do think, Gary, that your questions have an assumption that there should be regular automatic, like the numbers should be the same every year, and I'm not sure that's realistic.
No, it's just, when I see it, if they weren't on different pages,
Yeah.
and I saw a number go from 60 to 90 or 60 to 130, it's not that I expect everything to be identical every year. It's when I see wide discrepancies, but then when you add that next layer, which is it's on another page,
I understand.
it's very, very difficult to glean a budget, that way.
Yes, it does show the challenge of presenting information for our purposes, but using it so it can be managed effectively, and they're not necessarily compatible.
Okay.
He's letting the staff make the decisions versus the board. Roseanne and then Russ. And also, you guys, I have to say, they spoke for 4 minutes, and then we just pounded them with questions, which seems a little unusual to me, that we didn't let them present, and then maybe our questions might be answered, and then we get to ask them, because it just seems like
you're right.
we haven't gotten the presentation yet. I don't know. If
I
you want to
hope-
continue, we can continue, but it might be good to let them
Yeah, let 'em
speak to
explain,
the
yeah.
elementary school, so we have the overall picture, and then go with questions.
I might just say one thing. I don't think we're pounding them, so I would probably use a different, I don't think this is
Well, for
pounding.
15 minutes, there's been a series of questions after 4
Questions.
minutes of
Yeah,
presentation.
that's not pounding.
But we haven't even hit the topics you're asking about, so it seems like we should let them speak. That's all I'm suggesting is we do that and then come back to the questions, 'cause I'm sure they're not going to disappear unless they get answered.
I hope you feel good that we're
Unless some of
honoring
us
your
forget.
stuff by looking at it.
Okay, go ahead, Roseanne.
appreciate
then
that.
Russ.
Okay, so under professional salaries, I think this is a question to ask, because we are on page 11.
I didn't say any of the questions are bad. Please
Okay.
understand that.
Okay, so under professional
process.
salaries, and then you have under, to match the account 112, all the teacher salaries, contractual and so forth and so on. And with reading this and having a little better understanding of what you sent out, Christine, I notice, for instance, on when it says homeroom grade 2, grade 3, grade 4, those kids stay in that classroom for the day.
I'm going to defer that question. I don't know those answers.
Yes.
Okay, they stay in the class that day. And I believe we discussed this last year as well. I know last year in the grade 2 class, it was suggested at the budget hearing that we eliminate one second grade teacher because we had enough students that could go into 3 classes instead of 4. And I noticed that again this year. We actually have spots for 29 students. If you tally up the total for max and what remains, 7, 8, 3, and 11, there's space for 29, so there's more than enough to, again, look at the second grade and eliminate a second grade teacher. If I'm not, if I understand
Yeah, it's hard for
this
me, obviously, I
correct.
don't know how you're adding things up, but if you look on page 10, you're talking,
Okay,
and I think you may be referring to the enrollment in 3rd grade for next year. This year's 2nd grade is next year's 3rd grade,
okay.
right?
Oh,
And,
so this listed here is this year?
yes,
Okay,
yes,
okay.
that's all I can do.
Now,
We haven't
page-
scheduled
now-
anybody for next year.
Okay, now page 10. Page
So on
10,
page 10, the chart at the top,
Okay,
you see enrollment. So the 2nd graders move up, pretty much all move up to 3rd grade, and you can see the total number of students is 78. All right, and that's a small, small number compared to the other grades. But you can see what we did do. We had 5 3rd grade teachers this year. We reduced it to 4. And you see the average class size. When you divide 78 by 4, you get 19 and a half kids per class, and that is very much within the guidelines that the board has set for a class size. If you took one teacher out of that, if that's what you're suggesting, then you'd have class sizes over 25 kids per class. That's way beyond what we're used to.
but what's mandated? What's mandated by the state for class size?
Well, there's not really something that's mandated, but typically it's in that range of 19 to 22
Okay,
around third grade.
All right.
25 is certainly beyond,
okay, that's
Beyond
a
the
better
norm.
understanding of that, to
Okay.
use this with
yeah,
this.
so they move up. That is this year's.
Okay,
Right.
thanks.
Russ, right?
I have no, I would agree with Gary, the pounding thing. We're reading the information, we're asking questions, and I recognize
just
the
ask the question.
presentation.
Come on, folks.
Okay, that's fine. When I look at technology, unless you're gonna get into it based on what you said before, that you've consolidated functions at the SAU level on technology, so we should be seeing the technology budgets within each of the schools heading down, but the technology budget, which we'll get into later at the SAU level.
For a number of functions, yes. For some specific things that are school-specific, then they
Right.
stay in the school
Okay.
budget.
So, for example, on page 10, and I'm just doing this to clarify for myself and making sure I understand,
Yep.
that if the current year approved of 68 and then was revised to 56, and the proposed is 56, then the elementary school technology is staying about the same, even though there may have
Maybe
been some
spent differently, but
functions.
yes.
Okay.
Right, yeah.
And the only other general question, and I'm asking this seriously because I want to make sure I'm either understanding or way out to lunch. If I look at regular, and if we're going to get into that, I'll be more than happy to wait, the cost of regular education versus special education, you've broken that out. It looks like it's around close to 2 to 1.
One third of the teaching budget is special ed, 2/3 is regular ed.
Right, and I'm just trying to compare with what Jim had said before, which I think you had said that somewhere around 78% of our students were classified as, I don't know if the right word is regular, and maybe 23% were classified as special needs.
I'm not sure our percentage there. Gene?
That's what
Yeah,
you mentioned in the summer.
yeah.
The percentage of special education children is roughly 18% currently.
It's a declining percentage for us, which is a good thing, very good thing.
It has stayed low the last few years.
Okay, because I thought I'd heard it in the 20s, and I was just
It
trying to
was
get the
at one
numbers.
point before I came here,
Okay.
but in the last 4 years, it has gone down, and it's kind of leveled at about 18. It's actually 17.8, I believe.
Thank you.
So I just did the calculator, and that is 32% of the total cost. The special ed portion is 32% of the special ed and regular ed cost. Just since we know the percentage now of the class groups.
For 18%.
Yeah. Which is not surprising, given some of the costs that are incurred.
Well, yeah, I'm just,
Special.
it's sort of, I was just trying to get a ratio that says if 18% are special, is special ed or special needs, I want to use the appropriate, special needs is better.
Special education.
Then that's about twice as much cost per pupil if you're saying that it turns out to be about a third of the budget for.
Yeah, it's
okay.
big, that's why it's big.
That's just the way I look at numbers, so I'm
Yes.
just trying.
Nope.
Do you have a basic staffing number for special ed program
On the next page,
on the next page?
if I can ever get to it.
So, okay. Why don't we turn it back to you, give us the big picture,
Yeah, I think that's a
and
good idea.
I'm
maybe what we
sorry.
can do
Yeah,
is
I
we
didn't
finish
mean
the
to.
page presentation, we ask any questions about that page, go to the
Good.
next page.
Yeah, because on 11, that's all I would talk about, is really the staffing and explaining scholar supplies. Those are the key pieces. All those other accounts are all benefits and primarily.
So we're gonna move to page 12.
So you move to page 12. And again, I'm looking down at the narrative here, because again, we have lots of accounts, and so much are benefit-driven and supplies and so forth. But the 112 object says that we have 9 special education positions. And the initial budget, not this budget, but the previous budget, included a building special education coordinator, special education building coordinator. We have one at both the elementary school and at the junior, senior high school. When we had to trim our budget back to get to this budget here, one of the positions that we cut was a special ed building coordinator. Now, the cut is shown here in elementary. The cut is here in elementary. However, two things. That does not mean that it's the elementary person who might lose a job. We've yet to determine which of the two, but one of the two will lose a job, and then that person will have district-wide responsibility. Instead of just their own school they're in now, they'd have district-wide responsibility, and we'll determine that down the road. We're not ready to do that yet. But we made the cut here in the elementary just for the sake of budgeting purposes. Now, the other piece is that's cutting that administrative function in half. And the only way that we feel we can still make it work, and it has to work for our schools, is to then pay stipends to special ed, to specialists in the school, one at elementary, one at the junior, senior high, and pay a stipend for people who are case managers now, but who would also then pick up an administrative role. It's extremely important that we have a SPED administrator at all team meetings, and that's not the principal. And so this is our way for less money to hopefully fill that need. And that we've seen it work in other schools, and we're certainly willing to give that a try. But that is one of the cuts that's here.
Jim?
Yes.
When you say that it's helpful to have them at a meeting, isn't it required?
It's required. Did I say helpful? Yeah.
Or, well, you might not have said
It's really
helpful, but
necessary. You need to have.
You might have said necessary, but it's required.
It's required. It's required by federal law. You've got to have an administrator at all team meetings, IEP meetings, who is duly authorized to commit the resources of the district. That means if somebody says they need a one-to-one para, then they're able to commit at the meeting. You're not going out and waiting 2 days to get permission. And also you need somebody there who really has the expertise in special education law. And so it's that, for that reason, those two reasons why you need somebody like that at every meeting. So we can't just cut the positions in half and think we can meet that requirement. We can't. So we're looking with these stipends and other case managers to get involved, and we think we can make that work.
Roseanne?
A quick, so who will be the team chairs? The stipend will be $5,000 each for team chairs. Where will you be getting them from?
Each school has several case managers.
Okay.
And in other words, they manage particular students in their IEPs.
Okay.
What we would do is...
Each school has 7, you said?
Several.
Oh, several, okay.
Yeah, it's different at each
one,
school.
all right.
And what we would do is reassign some students so that the person who's the case manager has less of a caseload and then picks up the administrative role.
And the administrative role would be the team chair at the $5,000
Would be the
stipend.
team chair with the stipend.
So
Right.
if they're losing less students and have less work as a, what did you call it, a caseworker?
Manager.
As a
case
case manager,
Then why do we have to pay them $5,000 more to become a team chair?
because it'll be still a lot more work for them than they're currently doing. And you really need to hold administrative expectations of them. It is more work.
Okay.
Okay? 113 is the next one down. These are paraprofessionals, but the reason there's a big increase there, and I want to point out there, if you look at my notes down below, it's because we've moved a one-to-one nurse. So she's not paid as a paraprofessional because she brings a nurse skill set to the table, and so we have to pay more, but we moved it into that account. That's why that has gone up. Other than that, on that page, in the 1260 functions, you get down to our ESOL program. We're proposing a level program there, which means we have district-wide a half-time teacher who goes K to 12, And then each school has an ESOL paraprofessional. ESOL is English speakers of other languages. So we have populations at both schools to deal with.
Is there a reason why the actual for last year was $53,000 less than the budgeted amount for the aide salary, the second group?
Which one were you looking
Is that
at?
like a position that was cut in the middle of the year? The second line of
Can you see
the
that?
table, aide salaries,
1261,
386 versus 333.
Over here?
1261.13 for this year.
Aide
That's
salaries,
because
second
it's
line.
Yeah, one of the positions should go to halftime. Talking.
In the middle of the year, after the budget was passed, the school board changed or the administrator changed?
Let me back
going up.
You're going,
It's going up.
No,
It's not
no.
going
I'm talking about the 2 years ago, last year budget
the last
versus
year, the
actual.
76,000.
Please.
What account number, please, Brian?
Oh, the last year budget, I'm sorry.
The second
Right.
line.
Yes.
Aide salaries, 1,200.
We had, at the time, at that year, we had two full-time teachers, I think? We, each
He's not
school,
talking- He's not talking about ESOL.
he's not.
No.
He's talking about line
And
2.
went back, the second line of the
1,200.
Oh,
table.
you're talking
oh,
1,200.
okay.
Sorry, I'm
I'm
like,
sorry.
that's why I don't know where you're at. Okay,
Sorry,
now I'm on the
Ryan.
line. What was the question?
It's $53,000, which sounds like a position or two, less than what was budgeted. Why? What was spent, less than budgeted 2 years ago. Second column of the sec.
He's
Yeah, I
talking
know what you're saying. Yeah.
Am I looking at the same numbers?
Jim?
Yeah,
And now it's back up to 407.
We
I
did.
don't know the answer, but I
Yeah,
can
I'm
get it for
trying
you.
to
It's
remember
before my
how
time, so
many-
I know,
I'll have to look. I'll
We're
have
running
to
into
go
that a
back.
lot.
Because of that
Yeah.
change that came
Happened last
after the
year,
budget
too.
was approved.
But it went back up again.
Yeah.
in the-
Well, I'm just trying to understand,
Yeah.
you know.
Why it went up?
In that year,
Yep.
budget gets approved in March, and then in April, the state backed out of its retirement obligation. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
We had to come up with something like $293,000, somewhere in that vicinity. And so we made some cuts to cover that in the budget, because we couldn't raise any more money. We had to cover it in the existing budget, so
okay.
that's an area where we cut.
That's helpful.
But it's back again now?
No. It has a different look.
Well, went back up 40 or 50 grand in
Well-
what's being proposed.
Oh, I see what you're saying, yeah.
Well, it went up almost 70 from actual.
Yeah.
73, I thought.
When we, you know, and Gene can tell you, but when we
Yeah.
calculate, I mean,
Part
it's,
that's in
it's,
there. Yours is a lot part of that.
we go through IEP after IEP after IEP to determine exactly what do we need for paraprofessional services. And so it's the IEPs that drive it.
IEP meaning individual
Education.
education
Yes,
plan.
right. How many hours a week of this or that?
And that's also for what Dr. Hayes mentioned before, is we moved a one-on-one nurse who's, it's IEP driven. We moved that from the 2130. So you're gonna see the reduction in the 2130 on page 14. A little more than halfway down, the 2130, 112. If you look at the nurses line, you'll see that there's about a $43,000 reduction in there. That is the offset of moving. Just a reallocation, just so.
What
everybody
what
see
number
that?
was that? I didn't.
It's on page 14.
Yeah, where?
The account number 2130, 112.
So it went from 89 theoretically as an actual budgeted
52.
for this year, and it was budgeted 95 for last year. Is
That's
that
right.
accurate?
Yes.
So from last year, from 12 to 13, it basically went up 6 grand, and now it's being shifted into someone else's
Just a
responsibility.
reallocation, because it's an IEP, so it really should
Right.
fall under the
Special.
1,200 and not.
See, that's
nurse.
why it's very hard to sort of follow the budget when
Just trying to be clear and
no,
transparent.
Yeah.
it moves around a lot.
But the question, is there a better way for us to look at this? I mean, I'm not a professional educator. I'm never going to be a professional educator. I don't know all the laws that you're running under, whether they're federal or state. I don't expect to know that by the budget, nor do I hope I never comment on that in any of the things that I say. But there appears to be discretionary money for what the school board or you guys do in reallocating, and there sounds like there's non-discretionary money that may be mandated by the state or the RSAs or the school's version of those. How do we get a handle so we can have a good dialogue discussion rather than chasing a single line item, which we then found that's up, but because the line item 4 pages later over here went down and you don't know the oops. I'm never going to know, okay? And I don't want to get chased around. I trust the connections. How do we end up having a good dialogue about what's discretionary and non-discretionary
To a great extent, the IEP drives the expenditures. We're a team, we sit in a meeting, we decide that this child needs a one-on-one nurse, then we have to do that. If that's what the situation warrants, then we do that. And in this specific instance, for whatever reason, it was budgeted under the nurse's account. 2130 is school nurse. Granted, it's a nurse, but more properly, it's a special ed expense.
Correct.
And that's why it got moved. It was in the wrong account when it was 2130. It really was a special ed expense, because this isn't discretionary money and, oh, now we got a place we can assign the nurse. That nurse was a one-on-one with that student last year and is again this year.
Right, but I hope you understand my
I know.
question is, understanding the details of, in this particular situation in the elementary school on line 14,
Yeah.
that's driven by an IEP. I'm never going to get there for a 40-page manual if I spend the rest
get
of
it.
my life.
I get
okay?
it. I know.
But I would like to get a sense of where we have discretionary versus non-discretionary expenses, because the school budget is, 70 to 80% of what the tax rate is. People are aware of that. The number's going to be the number, and I just want to have a healthy discussion on how to best manage that number for the taxpayers and get a good quality education.
For the purpose,
Okay, so Gary was actually waiting, and then Dana, you can go.
This wasn't actually my question, but just to close the circle on this one issue. So it was originally brought up, it went from like 333 roughly to 406. So it's about 70, just call it 70. The adjustment is on page 14, based on what you said. So the difference there is about, I don't know, 40 grand, almost 30, whatever it is. 89 to 52 is 7, what is it, 47,000, something like that,
I wasn't following
right?
your math.
The difference between 89 and 52 is
just call it
about,
40,000.
call it 40 grand.
Okay, yeah, call it. Okay.
So, at the end of the day, it's still 30 grand, 30 grand more, if you want to look at it. If you're trying to close a circle on, the difference, it's about 30,000, for whatever it's worth. That was my question, but just for the sake of putting this to bed. On page 13, though, I did want to ask, you had a couple of line items that went away. The remedial,
Yeah, so Gary, can we wait a second? 'Cause let's just wrap up 12, then you'll be first on 13.
Oh.
Dana, did you have a question on
yeah,
page
no, I
12?
just want to make a suggestion, because I agree with the other board members who have a problem trying to figure out where everything's coming from. If we had a situation where funding were coming from another area to supplement, such as the nurses thing here that we're all talking about, what if there was an asterisk put somewhere with a narrative down at the bottom showing that this portion of this salary or this portion of this cost is associated somewhere else, so they can go down at the bottom and say, okay, now this is part of something else. Is that something that can be done, or is it really intense labor-wise?
It does tell you at the bottom.
They do
in
do
the
it.
note.
I
if
know,
you
but
want me
we're
to
all
add an
still
asterisk,
struggling here, so where it all coming from? I
If
don't
you were
know.
able to do it, you'd have my job. Can't have that.
No.
Travel an hour and 10 minutes either.
no, they do it, but
We
it's a
put it in
very
the narrative.
circuitous
It is,
route.
that's what I'm saying, it's not clear. I saw that in the bottom, I should have recognized it, I did see it, but to me, it's not clear clear enough to us if we're having this struggle.
Sure. I
I don't know what you can do about it, but,
can highlight it
okay.
and I can put an asterisk for you.
It's a
If
color
both-
document, maybe you could shade that box of the budget pink. And so that, hey, that's a hint that that's got
Yeah.
a transfer going.
Yes.
Transfer it over somewhere.
but something.
I
Or you
just
could
wanted
put
to
the
point out-
page to relate it to, I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay.
Okay, perfect.
And I just wanted to point out again, in terms of aides, aides are, special ed aides that are, those positions are specific to IEPs. So there, we often see a fluctuation in that, and it's based purely on what are our needs going to be next year or this year. So that's why that line item will never be just a
Flat.
flat year to year, same thing. It's
We-
all reliant upon what our needs are in the district.
We can have one student move in and
That can-
scramble that line. We
Significant.
can have one student move out and scramble that line.
Right.
I thought we were supposed to have a situation like that last year. You were telling us that was gonna happen this year. You were anticipating somebody coming in.
Right.
That was
Maybe.
gonna be- It was gonna, no.
Maybe, because we always plan on, when we put a budget together, we take a look at who we got, who do we anticipate in what situation next year.
Okay, my understanding
It's
was
not
it was
just move
actually
everybody
somebody
forward.
you were anticipating coming, knew in advance they were coming,
I-
and there was gonna be a very
I
high
do recall that
expense.
conversation.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how that turned out.
Yeah. They did come, okay, good.
Okay, Amy, or Roseanne, then Amy, then Russ.
In regards to this being confusing, when Gary had asked about the scholar supplies, and then you had to make him understand that if we went from page 11 in scholar supplies to page 15 for the health officer, who also receives scholar supplies, if you could see also page yada yada and the account number, just so we can do a quick referral. Something like that would be helpful.
Yada yada.
Yada yada.
Yada, yada.
Make sure you put yada yada in there.
Yada.
Color
How do
code,
you
too.
Yada yada. How do you spell that?
Yada yada.
You gotta watch some more Flintstones.
We're good. Yes.
It's spelled nebulous.
Okay.
I think I wanted to kind of echo what Brian's thought was, which is let you get through each page, because the notes, to me, are fairly self-explanatory. I would like to understand some of the details of the budget. It may be just me personally, but I think this is an awful lot of detail, which I expect you guys to be expert on. I'm not sure. I'm kind of focused on the big picture of, okay, the bottom line is a
That's what I'm trying to get you.
2.84 increase, and it comes from X. So pages 4 and 5, to me, kind of do that. I know it is important to go through all of these things and get us all to look at it in case there's another question, but I really would like to go through each page and kind of read the notes, because that may feed us into what I think that I want to do, is really look at the bottom line number, and say, okay.
And I wanna
do
touch
agree
on
with
the highlights.
2.84, don't I?
Yeah.
I guess so, so.
Do it.
Yeah.
That's just my view,
So-
and I think I'm trying to echo what Brian was
And
saying.
I
is
echo the
let's
same.
just
I agree.
move
So page
along.
13.
Well, it looks like Russ had a
Yeah,
question.
in the same, I'm trying to understand drivers, okay? And I'm
Yep.
understanding that an IEP, if I'm using the right word, is the, sort of the beginning of the process. Until you have that, you can't start to make decisions, whether it's regular or special education, and what requirements, what who's are there. And so I'm gaining some understanding, but I'm also trying to understand that as you classify things or do IEPs, that makes you change your budget or reallocate your budget based on the particular population of students, does that change state grants or special education grants as those change as well? Or are whatever those grants, it was sort of my understanding that there's certain grants that come as a requirement to do special education, not that it's fully funded that way. Does the revenue side change as you experience population changes?
No, unfortunately not. The revenues, the grants that we get from state, federal, or local, they are what they are. If we have a student that moves in and has an IEP, we find that within the budget, or we'd have to reach out to our trust funds.
But in the next year, is that adjusted for in what the state grants? So it's only a one-year issue?
Not necessarily. It depends. I mean, because special education is a a very large,
Complex.
yeah, it's very complicated because, I mean, if you're talking CAT aid, I mean, you do get additional reimbursement, but you get it the year, following. So to answer your question, we'd have to budget for it. Most of it's budgeted in the upcoming year going forward.
So you're a year behind, is that what you're saying, as to what you budget this year, you're funded from what you did last year?
What was that? I didn't hear it because
I'm saying in the grants and the funding, it's sort of you're a
CAT
year
aid.
behind?
CAT aid is done that way.
Okay. That's one of the many categories.
Can you
There's
explain
certain-
the acronyms?
Catastrophic aid. There's a certain, Jean. Yep, go ahead,
Yes,
Jean.
that'd be great, Jean.
Catastrophic aid is CAT aid, and those are funds that the state sets aside to help reimburse schools for extra high costs. Unfortunately, every year since I've been working, which is a long time, longer than I'm going to admit, every year that fund balance, the total amount that the state allocates, has gone down. When I first started working, we used to get 90 or 95% back on what we spent over and above. Like, for instance, there's 3 times the state average tuition is one level, and then 10 times and above is another level for cost. And we get reimbursed on a percentage of each one of those levels. It used to be 95%, and it was a big pool of money. The pool of money has shrunken. This year we're getting 68%, and we won't get it until this coming summer for this year's expenses, because we have to spend all the money up front. And then in the spring, we apply for catastrophic aid to get them to approve the costs and what we've spent, approve them to be applied toward catastrophic aid. And then the state gives us back a balance of money to put towards our costs. But it depends on how many other districts in the state of New Hampshire also have kids and how much money they're claiming, that our actual allocation can get smaller and smaller. So this year, we're looking at 68%, but there's no telling if we'll get that. We will not get more than that. That's 68% on the dollar.
Some of the things that are in the notes in here as well, so we understand those issues. Because I'm listening, and
It's
I
bad.
appreciate the fact that you're telling me whether it's the state or the federal government is saying these are the requirements in order to be able to put this program on or do this IEP. And yes, we understand that's a burden and we'll help support that, but we'll continue to increase the requirements and decrease the amount of revenue we support it. I mean,
Sounds about
am I
right.
hearing that reasonably accurately?
You are.
Which is
You're
not
right
a
on.
happy place to be.
Welcome
I
to the state of New Hampshire.
It's very frustrating, but that is the reality of us.
You know, it's high on when we advocate with state legislatures, it's high on the list, because CAT aid is,
Yeah, those are some of the overview things that would be helpful
Right.
to me to understand
Right.
your budget and how that breaks up according to those things. I'm just saying from my perspective. Thank you.
I'm not missing anybody? Okay.
page 13. Really just 2 takeaways out of this page, lots of accounts. The 1270 set of accounts deals with a position at the elementary school called the enrichment teacher. It says coordinator, it should say teacher. And we currently have an enrichment program there. As part of our decisions to reduce the budget to the budget that's presented to you tonight, that position is being eliminated. Program is not, but we don't need to get into program, I don't think, here, but we intend to fully continue enrichment for our students, just in different ways than we're currently doing. So that's what 1270 is all about, is eliminating that position. Then you get to the 1400s. If you look first in the 112 line, you see a considerable reduction. 1400, 112. That reduction is because we have a reading teacher who is retiring, and we're not replacing that position with a reading teacher. If you look down to line 1400, 121, we are replacing that position with a reading tutor. There's a big difference. Reading teacher is certified and able to do some testing that a reading tutor cannot. However, there are lots of services in reading that we can still provide through a reading tutor. And so we believe, even with this change in staffing, we're still going to meet the reading needs of our students, and for less money. You can see the net change there is
That's the one
not a
120,
wash.
16.
Pardon me?
That's the one, 121,615.
Account 1400-1-112.
Dash 120, 121,
Yeah, okay.
right. So one goes up, one goes down, but it goes down more than it goes up. So there's a net savings there. And so this is another thing that the board implemented when we did cuts to reduce our budget. Okay? On page 14. Any questions before we go to 14? Pretty straightforward stuff. Okay?
Yeah, I do. I have a quickie.
Okay.
So, if you, I just want to understand it, so you're, at 112, you had a remedial reading teacher, right, at 120?
And we have more than one reading teacher and.
Yeah,
and
teachers, I'm sorry, I
teachers,
should have
one
said plural.
retired, or will retire at the end of the year.
So that's going down to 57,
That's right.
okay. And that reflects one person?
Yes.
And then the aide and the tutors is essentially, the 81 and the 63 is being eliminated? Or, because it looks like 0 if you follow that line to the end. Line 113 and 114?
If you notice, we don't have anything for this year in that position.
Well, that's why I said, are they being eliminated, or?
We have, it was eliminated from a year ago.
The budget they're operating underneath right now does not have that
Right.
funded.
We're saying they're not funded.
So there's, okay,
They
so.
don't exist this year, they're not funded for next year.
Okay. And then, if you go to 121, it's 180?
It jumps from, basically from 150 to 180, yes. And that money's used to buy us an additional reading tutor. So there's a
But
net
it's
savings there.
Offset from the 121,6 down to the 57.
Right.
Correct.
So, and pardon my asking, but I just want to understand it. So if you add up all the numbers, you got rid of 81, you got rid of 63.
Well, that was a year ago. That's
Yeah,
not,
but it's not, it's no longer, well, it
Yeah.
was, I guess technically, last year, meaning part of this year. We're still in this year, I guess.
tutors were lumped together.
Tutors are lumped together.
Yeah, the tutors are lumped
Just
together. and
the
they-
think they were lumped
114
together,
is
right?
actually in the 121.
Yeah.
Basically, by not rehiring the reading specialist teacher, they save 70,000 or so, and they're hiring a tutor, which or aide, which is gonna, and the net savings is 40,000, approximately.
Correct. About 40,500.
Is that what you're trying to get at, Gary?
That's what I'm trying to figure out, if you take out what you got rid of and what you kept,
Yeah.
the net is 40,
4532.
okay. That's what I was trying to,
lady. All right. That's good.
okay, thank you.
If you look, not that I want to dance the pages here, but go back to page 8. Yeah, don't worry, I won't keep you there long.
more questions.
But on
Jim, you're
page 8,
raising,
these are all of the cuts that we made,
Oh, okay.
because you were talking before about different accounts. So if you look at, you come down and you've got modular lease, enrichment teacher, ESOL, and then reading specialist, those next 4 lines after reading specialist. Those are the 4 changes we're referring to. So there's the net salary change, and the benefits change as well. Because if you take away the benefits from the reading teacher and then give benefits to the reading tutor, there's a savings there as well. You see that?
Yep.
So that's, again, we're trying to get to a certain level of cuts that we want to achieve, and that's the net change there. So same up above when I talked a moment ago about enrichment teacher. I know you might have looked only at the salary line, but there's a set of benefits that goes along as well. So that cut alone is what, almost $62,000. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Page
On-
14.
Page 14. 1410 is co-curricular, non-athletics, but co-curricular. It's all level program. Down below, I've described all of the different programs that we have and the amount that's spent for them. 1415 is for athletics, so we do have some coaching that's done at that level. 2120, that grouping is all about guidance. We have one guidance counselor. And 2130 is all about nursing. We only have one school nurse. We already referred to the fact that we pulled that special ed nurse out of there. Any questions on any of that?
Just for clarification, these numbers are all given to us by the state or by someone, is that correct?
The account numbers?
The account numbers?
Yes.
We're not making these numbers
No,
up.
no, no, it's standard fare.
It's a,
Sorry, it's standard fare.
well, no,
Yeah.
I know the first year I was on the budget committee, I was like, where are these numbers coming from? This just seems ridiculous. And
We have a big binder that has more than
Be careful
that's
about your
here.
binders.
Yeah, I am, yes. And if nothing on that, then page,
I think I made the suggestion last year, and I won't be here next year to talk about it again. But you're really good at doing this. But I think if you made it this way, or had some where you told us the names, because these numbers don't mean anything, like he just said. And it's helpful if it just said co-curricular in vertical
Yeah, I
text
know.
next to it,
Yeah.
and get rid of the account numbers,
it's gonna look very different next year
or at least get rid of the
anyway.
first four.
I'll send you a copy.
It's gonna look very.
Why do we need the account?
That mean we'll get reconfused next year?
You will.
It's been like that 4 years I've been here. 2 new administrators, 2 new finance people.
Well, I don't know. I mean,
Not your fault.
just something.
No, I get your point. I mean, I've looked at the towns, and, I like their format.
I wasn't necessarily raving about the.
No, I
towns.
know that, but I mean, I like it with the 5-year extension, but by the
Oh, I
same
don't.
token,
No.
they're different than we
Careful,
are
Brian,
because
what
they
you're
have
wishing for
discrete
here for us.
departments. Excuse me, discrete departments, and we don't. We're big and integrated, very different. But we are, January 1st, implementing a new accounting software, which certainly our intention is to build a budget using that software next year. So it may very well look different, but hopefully it looks a lot better. So,
I mean, even
I'll
When
second.
the expense goes down?
I think.
Is that the better?
Well, I think that what would be interesting is like, so you do guidance, right? You put guidance in vertical text next to it, and then you can even have a guidance subtotal that totals up all the numbers there. So someone can go, the guidance hole within the elementary
I get it.
schools
It will
costs
have
us
function
$67,000.
I know what you're saying. Yeah,
Next year's
Because
gonna
then I think
Category.
you're right.
people like Russ who want big picture
Yeah.
can start to pull it out more quickly
I know,
than what they can do right now.
I know.
Okay.
Thank you.
Hopefully we'll remember these ideas next year. Before you put
We
it
will.
together.
I'll show you when the software goes live.
Yeah.
Okay.
At some point in May, I'll show you what a budget can look like next year. So we can work with it.
Maybe you want to come back, Brian.
No, I'm sorry.
We'll do it before you leave. Oh, we'll have to do March.
My time has been planned already.
That'd be tough.
Okay, thank you for
On page
hearing me out.
15,
Yes.
it's a very much level program. The 2152 functions are for speech therapy positions. We have 2 of them, 2 speech therapists. The 2160s, that's occupational therapy. We have almost 2. We have 1.9. I'm sorry, 1.4. 1.4. And then 2210, when we get into that, here's where we start talking about some professional development. You've got speakers and funds in there that are used for course reimbursement, and funds also for attending workshops and conferences. Any questions, any of that? Okay.
I'm sorry, did anybody?
On page 16, the 2220 accounts, which is about half of those accounts, it's all about library media. We have a library media specialist who serves at district-wide. So we've listed half of her salary and benefits here, and the other half in the junior, senior high school. Each of those libraries, because she can't do 2 at once, obviously, but each of those libraries is staffed by a library media assistant. So that's what you see there in the paraprofessional lines and so forth. $2230 is when we start to get into technology. Let's see, where is it here? $2230. You don't see anything there listed for positions. Again, that's been, because it's district-wide responsibilities, we put those into SAU. But you do see things in there that are school-specific. But what I'm going to do is ignore those for the time, because I want to cover them later when I cover the technology. Remember when he mentioned what the agenda was? I want to do elementary and do purely technology separate, okay?
I have a quick question on that one.
Sure.
Information services subscription and fees, 0 in the budget?
It's 0 because it's been moved to the SAU office.
Okay, I thought that, as
And
I
when we
said,
get to technology, you'll see.
Okay, to be part of that.
That's how it's been done.
Okay.
Ellen has a question.
I just, another comment about information in the packet, but back up under the second line, back up under library media.
Yes?
113, you call it a paraprofessional, the library media assistant. But I don't think very often you use paraprofessional before the title of the aides, and it might be helpful also to use that
Yeah,
term.
I agree with you there.
Where they are, because
Standardize.
you talk about paraprofessionals in the comments, but then they don't show up anywhere, so.
Because technically, it's not even a paraprofessional position. It's a library media specialist, and so it's,
So go one way or the other. either,
one
yeah,
year it
call
was a paraprofessional, and then we changed it because it
But
really.
where the paraprofessionals are in the budget is
Instead
not
of
really
saying
very clear.
aides, I agree with
Yeah,
you.
if you could
Yeah,
do that,
we
I
should
think that'd
do
be
that.
helpful.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Really standardize it.
That means next year there's gonna be a bunch of zeros and then a number for the first time.
No, we're just
No,
gonna
we
change
won't
the
do that
title.
Oh, okay.
That's the
Just
title
making it
change.
clear.
Change the description.
Yeah.
Roseanne?
Question on the secretary's salary. That's your secretary, Mr. Hayes? Dr.
I'm
Hayes?
sorry, where are you? What,
Where are you?
2410115.
No.
oh, we're not on that page.
We're not that page yet.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm still on 60.
Plus, this
okay.
one means elementary school, so.
Oh, okay, sorry, thanks.
Yeah, we're still on elementary,
Okay,
so it wouldn't be
that's
mine.
right. All right.
Okay? So move over to 17.
Okay, go ahead.
17, 2410 is when you get into school administration. You see there's a line there for the principal and assistant principal salaries. Secretary, the office at the elementary school has 2 secretaries, one of whom is year-round, full-time. The other is on a somewhat shorter school year, 230-day contract. And then the rest are a lot of either salaries and benefits or supplies for operation of the administrative function, be it telephone, postage, and so forth, and dues. And then that's the administrative. Then we start getting into the 2600s, which is maintenance, custodial.
Yeah,
Okay, and we have 2 full-time custodians, 1 part-time, and a head custodian. Again, it's all level programming. There's no increase or decrease in those requests.
Roseanne?
So now that you mentioned the secretary, that's for one, so that total for 71,000 is for 1 full-time and 1 part-time?
Yes, but again, the
Okay.
part-time is 230 days.
Okay.
Think
Oh,
of,
but
think of,
260 days.
think of year-round as 260, so you're not too far away,
90%.
Okay.
yeah.
So that's an employee and a half?
In essence, more than a half. More than a half.
Point seven.
3/4.
Yeah.
Okay.
Actually, 0.8.
Yep.
Brian, I have a question.
Yeah,
Okay.
go ahead, Dana. 88% time.
On account number 2410-442, rental equipment, copier. How many copiers is that for?
I think I have it in here. Hold on 1 second. For 5 copy machines.
Yeah, 'cause it's our budget
And we're,
actual.
so it's cheaper to rent them, obviously, than to purchase them right out.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, okay,
They're-
makes sense. Okay, so that's 5 of them, all right.
But
I was
just-
thinking-
I had a question about that
That's
too.
maintenance and supplies.
yeah.
And supplies.
Why is it, how
Not
is it
paid.
actual only half of what was budgeted?
Yeah.
I mean, it's not,
Right.
it either is or isn't, so like, you guys can't control that cost that well
Why is the actual half of what we're budgeting?
for the
Double.
last
Back in
year.
last year,
yes,
actual.
11,537.
Because we have a new contract that took place, I want to say November of last year. I think it was November of last year we just signed into. So we're into a new 5-year lease. So that's the cost that we're going to have with.
It
Right,
doubled the
but
cost?
But the leases are typical, from my experience, a set amount to have it, and then a
Correct.
per copy cost.
Correct.
So if we were paying $11,000, why did we decide to double the cost?
Do we add a copier?
I don't know if I don't know what the specifics are, if there was more machines or less machines. I can find out for you.
I don't know.
But that's the cost when I looked at the contract that we had signed.
I mean, it's not a big thing with me, but there is a
That
difference. when I
includes
saw that.
color, includes black and
Yes,
white,
right.
all the equipment. And then that also includes not just your copiers, but that includes the
Fax.
printers
That's right.
and the faxes as well.
Oh,
All lump sum.
okay. Oh, okay.
So that's your ink cartridges and everything. This is everything
Correct.
except paper.
Correct.
That's right.
Yep. So all those
Oh.
printers
That's
that
neither
are in the
here nor there,
classrooms.
it doubled.
It doubled, absolutely.
Well, again, she's gonna check out, see if there's another copier added or,
I don't know what on the equipment
Right.
numbers, but I can find out for you.
Thank you.
yeah, thank you.
I don't know the equipment.
Sorry, Dina, I interrupted you. Did you have something else?
No, that was fine. Actually, I'm glad you brought it up, because I
Oh,
was
sorry,
thinking
Tom.
about it.
Yeah, this is elementary.
Okay. We're going on the 18th?
Anybody else on 17? Okay. 18.
18, again, 2,600 is all about custodians and all the maintenance. You know, they're all, I'm happy to answer any questions that you've got in there, but you can see what we've done with, you know, and when I highlighted what was driving the big expense, I mean, the one that jumps out to me is, at the middle of that chart is fuel oil. I mean, it's just a killer,
Oh, how's that?
but we're all living with that. The other one that to highlight on this page, in the accounts, it's the third line from the bottom, modular unit. You'll see the 14,220 that we had done for multiple years. And then this year, we did get approval, if you didn't hear that already, town council approved impact fees to actually purchase the modular building as opposed to leasing it, rolling it over into another lease. So that's how we were able to cut the 14,220 out of the budget.
Oh, that's good.
That's good, yeah.
And that's everything there.
Go ahead,
One
Roseanne.
quick question. So the modular unit, you did get approved for this year for 14,220 on it?
We had I want to say a 3-year lease, 4-year lease?
You get a 3-year lease
Yeah,
that will
3-year lease.
expire in August of this year.
August of this year, okay.
Correct.
So then, you got in last year's, you got $14,220.
That was the last year,
Correct.
for the last year of the lease.
For the last year of the lease, which is in this right now.
Right.
So, to buy out the remainder of the lease, it was 59 and change.
56,878.
Okay. Did you back out the 14,000 that you already got budgeted for to take out of your budget to use for that?
Can't take out the 14, you can't take out the 14,220 because we have to pay up to December. And we had a buyout agreement that if we purchase it today, if we purchase it this month, which we did, we just got approved 2 weeks ago, that they would meet us halfway in the remainder of the lease payments because we're obligated to pay until August. They met us halfway, so we have about a $3,500 savings in the budget.
Do you still incur the expense in this fiscal year?
Most of the expense.
Okay.
That's
Correct.
this year's
Okay.
budget, right.
Everything but
Yes.
11,000.
Okay, thanks.
I mean, 3,500. Amy.
Back up to your favorite, fuel oil.
Yeah.
Last year was a milder winter. I understand, I don't know that prices per gallon have gone up that much, but we're budgeting 40% more for this year for fuel oil than actual spent last fiscal year.
What was budgeted last year was $245, $243. We are currently locked in at $330. I'm anticipating a price to be $350 next year.
That's what I'm
I
thinking.
think it was the same usage.
And just think.
Well,
part
the-
Plus $1 per gallon.
The numbers, the numbers for that budget were presented at this time 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And 2 years ago, the situation was better.
And that's for
Oil.
And it was a
4,000.
mild
Right.
winter. I mean,
4,000 gallons a year.
Yeah, but even without that, the dollars per gallon was 2 years ago, not
Correct.
last year. I wanted to be clear on that. Okay, thank you.
That's a great question.
Gary?
And just for the record, on page 15, I didn't bring it up at the time, but the travel and the course reimbursement, you know, is going from an actual, I know it was budgeted 16, but it's going from 43 to 16.9, and 9 to 15, which are fairly hefty increases. I understand they probably cut back because of the budgeting, but it's, you know,
Are you talking the course reimbursement, the 9,000 versus the 15?
yeah, on the 4.
That's it's contractual per the collective bargaining agreement, that we have to budget that amount.
And the 4 to the 16?
Correct.
And those weren't
Contractual.
budgeted before contractually?
It is. That's why you see in last year's budget, they're the exact same in last year's budget. The 15 and the 6,950 are the exact same in the approved.
But they weren't spent.
What was spent was the 9,000 and the 4,300. but contractually, we have to budget for that amount, so that if every teacher were to utilize their funds, that would be what we'd be liable for. That's contractually, we have to put that in there.
And just so I'm clear, so if they don't use it, it can either fall into your fund balance, or it can be used in another area, correct?
Correct.
That's right.
I don't know, can anything in collective bargaining, it's stated what you have to, it's stipulated what you have to use dollar amounts for. How can you absorb collective bargaining funds into your,
It's part of your operating budget.
It's,
We
If
still
you-
have to meet that obligation to them, though.
Yeah.
You know, if they were to request the full amount, then,
I think there needs to be something clarified. It's not that you have to budget it. It has to be available to be spent if
Right.
someone asks for it.
right.
That-
But this district's policy has been to budget the maximum amount that the contract would allow, because you're budgeting the liability.
I think in the contract it states.
Yeah, but, well, that would be hopefully something that gets addressed through your current negotiations, that we don't have to budget for something that's historically never happened. Because there's no way we've ever spent $16,950 in
See,
1 year.
that bothers me less, budgeting it, realizing I'm not thrilled with it, than the fact that if it isn't used, it doesn't, by definition, fall into a fund balance. That's what frustrates me when I look at this more.
It could.
I know it could, but, that's, it just seems to me that if you're contractually putting money aside for something to be used for a specific need, and it's not used, okay, we didn't use it, and it seems to me it should fall into the fund balance. But that's, that's what's frustrating, because we really don't know what it, could be used for anything.
Right, but but the good thing is that, at least underneath Christine, and I think the previous one, the business administrator, if the district did spend it on something else, they wouldn't hide it in the same line item, which some accounting business offices have done.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if Newmarket is, but we know that happened on the town side.
And that's
Years
what-
ago,
That's what
years
that
ago.
actual, that's what that actual column.
And if it's a transfer between
Bad either,
functions, the
that's
board has to approve that, just so
Right,
you know. I
exactly.
only
Yeah,
have
that-
the authorization to transfer within the function, from
So
function to function I
that's
cannot do.
good. So to that point,
So it's not,
just so I understand.
But that's
That's a great
good,
question.
but it's a thing that has not always been the case in the town side. I can't speak to the school side.
So just, just to close the circle on it, do you know, I don't mean right this second, but could you indicate to us what the delta between the 43 and the 16.9 on line item 2210-1580, for example? What happened to the difference? Like, could you say, oh, that fell to the fund balance, or no, we used it to do something else with it? Because in a way, you just said that we don't just do that. We have to either go to the school board, right? And we have to annotate it in some way and get approval, which I think is good.
if I transfer it.
Well, yeah, so if you don't transfer it, right, then it goes to the fund balance.
Right.
Correct.
So all I'm asking, and I'm just asking, what, if I said to you, just as a hypothetical, because this could be any issue, this could be any line item, I want to know, how do we follow that 43 to 69? Do you know where that ends up?
I do.
Okay. And do you happen to know, in this case, if it went to the fund balance?
I'd have to look, I don't know.
Okay, but you could know.
Correct.
That would be,
We have
useful.
to do journal entries to track, to move the funds, we'd have to do journal
Okay.
entries, and we have to show that to our
mean,
auditors.
and you're
So
right,
there is
the-
backup for any type of transfer that you do.
And that, it's great, because the town, frankly, to my knowledge, has not been doing that, so,
So this.
that being said.
Just to add on to this, let's say that this was next year's budget and we're looking at it, and you showed us another column for this year FY13 that we're in. So there would be the approved, the revised, and the actual. Let's just pretend we're looking at these two ones that we've been talking about, and it said, instead of saying 16,950 for the actual, it said 10,000. That would tell me that $6,950 went to the fund balance from that line item. Because you would have to show the revised would have to go down if you were transferring it. Otherwise, there's no change anywhere to show a transfer.
But wait a minute, if it was 10, how would you know they didn't use it for education?
Because they can't, because then, well, we don't know that, but we're trusting that the business manager is following best accounting practices and
You'd either
putting
have
it
to
to
have
the
a
actual.
journal entry to show it, so you wouldn't see it here. So like, if I had that $6,900 that you're referring to, I could have transferred that to a different account to offset if I had,
Right, but what's the whole point of a
several.
if you're revising the budget at some point and then you're not correct? This is different than what the previous person did, just to be clear, from what she talked about. She said the numbers would change in that line item to reflect what was actually done.
they would, in the journal entry, that's what it does.
Right, but the journal entry affects the entries of all the budget reports. So
That's correct.
Why wouldn't it show it?
It would show it, but it would show it in the budget, but you would have to know where I moved it to go look for it, to see it.
I don't really care where it moved.
Okay, then
I
that's
wanna
why I
know-
just want to make sure.
But if it moved, it would change the revised column, right?
Yes,
So then we would be able to tell, oh, okay, the expenditures actual were 10,000, the revised budget was 10,000. So they've sent 6,000 somewhere else. We don't know where it went, but
right.
they sent
as-
it.
Yes.
So
if
it's
that's
not
what
going to
you're-
the fund balance.
Yes, if that's what you're getting, yes. you
So
just would
next
have
year, I think we would have a very good picture of understanding, if you wanted to, what made up the fund balance. So then you guys could say, wow, you've been way over budgeting oil or whatever it is. Let's
Right,
be
but-
more realistic.
So anything
Brian, to your
going into
point,
the fund
This
balance
is good.
would
If
show
the
it?
revised balance doesn't change in total, though, it means the money may have been taken away from 15 categories because we underspent, and we're moved to 47 categories, but the total number didn't change.
Right.
The only way you're, as Gary says, fund balance, which I think is, we don't have a fund, it's a surplus, I guess, at the end of the year.
It's all the same terminology.
Is that unless your revised budget is lower than your original budget in total, the money was absorbed somewhere else.
Right.
See, I'd like to know where it was.
No, unless your actuals, because what I just said is if you kept
And you,
the
I could run you a
16,009.
journal entry report at the end of the year, so you could see all the journal entries.
Oh my gosh.
So if you really want to know specifically,
No,
you can get that detail.
all
I
I'm-
don't.
The only reason I asked the question is because when you see a budget for, call it 17 grand, and you spend, call it 4,400, I'm just rounding it out.
Right.
And you go, where's the other 12,000? It's 4 times the amount, give or take. It would be nice to know where the money was it spent? If it wasn't, because this doesn't tell me if it was spent. All this tells me is,
Yeah.
we budgeted it.
Why do we,
Right,
what
no, it's
do
a valid
we need
point.
that detail for?
Absolutely.
Yeah, let me
Again,
just
Gary, that
clarify.
year was, that was a unique year.
Well, I'm assuming you
with
cut
that-
back because of the economy, but I don't know that.
Well, we also have,
Well,
Yeah.
they had the loss of,
Page
they had the
4.
increased cost from the state, the loss of funding,
Right,
all that together.
budget
And budget
freeze.
freeze.
But that was for travel conference, just, for whatever it's
Right,
worth.
but what we would be able to know is, I think, Russ, if you looked at my scenario where you had the 3 columns, and the actuals were less than the revised budget, then you know the difference is for fund balance.
It's like
It's left
finding,
over. Otherwise, and they're the same,
There's no other
they-
place
They
it can
lowered
go.
it and transferred what was originally budgeted to some other purpose, and then you can ask the question, what was it?
it's a question of where's Waldo in the dentist office. That's all we all would like to see, is where is Waldo, okay? And in a way that we can understand it, and not have to chase through, which I appreciate all the details you
I
have.
just wanted to make
But
sure there's no
chasing through
cavities.
40,000 line items,
Page 4.
that hasn't killed me yet, it probably will shortly.
Because really,
Well, I think what I'm hearing is that there's an accurate way to understand the decisions that were made, and they're reflected by the school board and superintendent, and they're reflected in the accounting that's
So
going to
there's-
be presented.
There's accountability all the way across.
yeah.
Are we
Bottom
in
line.
agreement that on the surplus funds at the end of the fiscal year, that you would give us some type of narrative to what went in to make up those funds, surplus funds?
I can do that.
Is that what you were asking for?
I think it'd be
At the end of the
helpful to
I think so
understand that, but
too.
it's
So I
at the
just want to
end-
be clear
it's
that
the
we
end of
can
the
look
year.
forward to that. Okay.
Yes.
No,
Yeah, I
I
don't
can
see
do
why
that.
not, yeah. That makes
Okay.
sense.
Makes sense. I think we should have done that on the town side too. That would have been a lot
Are you
more
ready to go to
interesting.
technology?
I am, page 39.
So we threw in the towel on the fuel oil, that's over.
Oh,
Well, I feel like the town's made the decision not to heat the building, but I have no idea.
do we have any idea how long this section will take? Do
I know. What?
we have any idea
68 degrees
how
in
long
here.
this will take, whether we should take a 5-minute break or something?
Feet are numb.
I thought about a break, but I think we need to keep going.
Even 2 hours.
Well, some of us have different bladders.
If you need to go to the bathroom, you're welcome to go to the bathroom.
No, I was
You
thinking
won't-
somebody else had made a comment about it, and I just brought it up, that's all.
Mine was more for nicotine.
It was.
I think this is too much information.
I agree.
I think
Yeah,
so.
this
I'm
is
accused
way-
of that all the
Okay,
time. so.
on
somebody
page
has to go, they should
39,
go.
you see a chart. And what I did is I took certain technology accounts out of each of the cost centers. So again, when you see 2230, 0, 300, the 0 means it's SAU. The 1 in the next line means it's elementary school, and the 3 is junior, senior high school. So this what I tried to do is give you one big picture of technology, and it's sort of getting what you said before about other things. But here you can see for tech contracted support, this is using outside services to provide some additional support for us. You can see it is distributed amongst the 3 cost centers. Okay? Equipment repair, same thing. There is money set aside across the 3 cost centers. Computer lease, there was a time there was a lease in accounts. We're still just carrying the numbers forward, that's all. Supplies, they have very small budgets for supplies in the schools. Of course, if the principal needed to, the principal can use some scholar supplies to boost that. 643s. Now here you see that what was happening at elementary, what was happening at junior, senior high school, really we saw as district-wide purchases, and we wanted to bundle that money all in the SAU account. So you can see how in the FY14, it all gets grouped together in 58.6 thousand. Software is distributed across the schools because there are varying needs. Equipment and replacement equipment I'll get to in more detail in a moment, but each school has asked for requests in there.
Now, does this total up? Because I'm not seeing a total on
I didn't
these.
total it. I don't know.
But if I took each of the technology pieces from all 3 of the areas and added them all up, they come to the number that's on like page
Yeah, these,
4.
I just grabbed the lines out of the previous, so,
So it
Right.
totals the
They just-
460, 438.
But if we wanted to,
No, I don't think it's going to
Where are
total
you?
464.
no, because that has salaries in it. We have tech support.
Trying.
yeah, I'm just looking at a chart that doesn't have a total on it, which
No.
is sort of like a total at the bottom, so it can tell me
Would you?
what.
Okay.
From last year, for the FY13 to what we're proposing, it's about a $8,300 increase. If you
If you added them all up. and-
you added the 8,000, the 16, the 25.
Which, if
about
I'm
an
just saying, if it had a
$8,300
total,
increase.
that would be easier to see.
On page 40, takes each object and then describes what they're purchasing in each object, because it's very similar in the schools. And so tech contracted support totals $20,667. Equipment repair across the district, it varies by school because we have some that are much older than others and so forth. So, again, you've got some description there. We have computers that generally much of our equipment runs 7 to 10 years old. That's true. Supplies, I already said, was very small. Information service subscription fees, now here you do get a breakout of what it is that we're purchasing, and they go across the district. Alert Now, what's been used recently with the Connecticut thing and Newtown, and contacting parents about that.
Is that reverse 911?
It's similar, but again, it's only to our staff and our parents.
Does this include site licenses you may have on it?
Whatever is necessary to do it, mostly their subscriptions and annual fees. Antivirus, Fortinet is our firewall system. Google subscription funds our email and a whole other host of applications that we use. Ghost and recovery, those are just very small amounts, but again, it's all part of systems work that we do. Encode, that's our new accounting software. And then Infinite Campus, that's our students and staff records system. So again, these span what happens in the district, and that's why we bunched them.
Russ has a question.
Yeah, with the new accounting system that it sounds like you're getting, do we lose history for comparable purposes with the, so we're gonna be in a brave new world?
Always.
We're gonna be in a brave new world, and there will be a lot of data entry on our part to create the history.
And we think that's worth it because this new system is just chock full of goodies?
This new system is gonna represent a more clear and transparent budget for us. It's also gonna make us more efficient in the office with payroll and accounts payable and purchase orders. And it's just gonna be, it's a phenomenal product that we purchased last year.
But there's no machine-to-machine transfer of the old data, putting
That is
it into
correct.
the
It's
new
software.
format, so we have to
You can.
shove it in.
Well, they can write a script to pull it through, but you're looking at about $40,000 to $60,000 to have
Right,
them write
but
that
they don't
script.
have conversion software as part of this new
No,
software.
because we're going from one to the other, and they don't
They
talk
do,
to
and
each
they
other.
sell it
and-
for $40,000 to $60,000 individually.
So we said we would just create we'll be doing some data entry to create current year, last year, and then current year, and then going forward. So your budget will look different next year.
We've heard that for the last 4 years. But
But it's gonna be for the better. It will
getting
We
be.
better.
shouldn't invest
It will
in
be.
getting trained this year, because next year I'm gonna have to get
It's going
retrained.
live in 2 weeks, so.
I thought you
Stay
said
tuned.
May.
No, January.
No, I said I can I'll do the budget, I can start preparing the budget, the budget for the next year in May.
Oh,
So that Brian could see it.
Oh.
Term's up in March, just to be clear.
That's what I thought after I said it. I'm like, well, March isn't gonna cut it, so. No, it's going live in a couple weeks, so.
Just a quick question on 41, middle of page.
He hasn't gotten there yet, just so you know.
Oh,
He's almost
not
at the
there.
bottom of page 40.
Almost there.
okay.
So I'll let you be ready on the next page when he gets there.
Yeah, the last thing is just a comment about software. As you can see, what the commentary there is saying is that we've upgraded our operating system, our network, and we're obviously moving to a Windows 7 environment. Windows XP is not supported since January 2011. So as we bring new computers into that world, we need to buy new educational software that works with it. So that's what that amount of money is for. So then you get to 41, which summarizes.
Question on
I'm sorry.
40.
Yes.
Yeah, the only question I have is, why would you not go to Windows 8?
Well, I couldn't tell you that.
If you're buying new ones, I would think you want to go to 8.
I don't really.
Change that whole platform.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, everything that we've done up so far has been with Windows 7.
It could be like a compatibility situation with existing.
Or the higher will pull in the 7. The higher number will pull in the 7.
Might be
Yeah,
really
but they're not
different.
coming from 7. they're going from
Windows 8 is designed in part for touchscreen, so
a lot of
it's
that.
not
That's
super
not us.
compatible
That is
between
not us, right.
Baby steps.
the future, but we're not ready.
Well,
Under-
that was why I asked.
When we as administrators put this budget together, the principals, and I would say independently here, but clearly are feeling the need to move forward with the use of technology in teaching and learning. And as you heard me say, much of what we have is 7 to 10 years old. We have a lot of infrastructure problems that we've been trying to solve. But as we solve them now, there is a growing interest within our schools to do more with computers. And so both principals came forward with sizable requests for funding for new and replacement equipment. And it was my decision in working with them, and obviously the board supported it, that we couldn't ask for it all. It just would be a budget buster, and I get that. So what we tried to do is shape those proposals where some of it was in the operating budget, in somewhat similar vein to how we've spent money in the past, so it wasn't going to kill the bottom line. And then that the rest of it, or some of the rest of it, would then go into a separate warrant article. And that's what's framed in this whole discussion here. As you can see, the first grouping there, the elementary school wanted 2 laptop carts. Plain and simple, they wanted 2. And so what I said is, let's separate them. One through the budget, and hopefully one through a separate warrant article. And that's what you see listed there. In the junior, senior high school, there really is an interest, and it certainly was greater than the amount that's shown here, I will tell you, an interest to move forward in the school with the use of technology in teaching and learning towards a one-to-one kind of environment with kids in instruction. Every kid having a laptop, or every kid having, in this case here, an iPad, because as we went through discussions, that's what we settled on. And that is a model for that school, certainly for the high school anyway, for the future. And so what's reflected here is to first create a pilot project so that we can test out what this means for us. And so what you see here is a cart with 30 iPad 2s on it, training for teachers, and support computers for teachers. And the idea here is then to have 4 teachers be the pilot teachers who would then be trained in the use of these as instructional tools and actually implement it in their classrooms. And the goal here was to get one from each of the major academic departments, English, Math, Social Studies, Science, and then really learn how to use that as a tool so that it kind of sets the stage for future implementation. And as we talked with the folks from Apple about how to best price this out, it made more sense to us to do a lease purchase arrangement, or 3-year lease that you see done here. And so that while I've given you the breakout of how we get to the total of $37,660, it really is then a 3-year lease that we're budgeting for of $13,432. At any time we can, if we have to end the lease because it doesn't get approved in a future budget, then so be it. Then that happens and the equipment would go back. Or we'd have an option to buy out, I suppose. But anyway, that's what that's reflective of, and so that's really putting us on a path towards. I mean, I don't say I hate using the term because it gets so overused, but 21st century teaching and learning, which is not where our kids are today in using technology in teaching and learning. So we want to have a pilot program, and that's what this will enable us to do. To go along with that, to get to the third section here, you see we'd have a printer and an access point, so it would be part of the cart. Wherever you take the cart, there's printing capability, there's wireless capability. The last thing in terms of replacement that the junior senior high school needs desperately, if you're really going to use technology in teaching and learning, ceiling mounted projectors. And again, the amount was overwhelming, so as I worked with the principal, divided it up between what goes into the operating budget and what goes into the technology warrant article.
All right, Gary had a question, and then Roseanne and Russ.
On that little section there, 30 iPad 2s and et cetera, I can't really speak to whether I don't know if an RFP was put out or not, but your lease number doesn't add up to that number. The lease number is over 40,000, so I don't know if I misunderstood the way that works, but
it doesn't add up to that. This is if we
There's a cost to the
there's
lease.
a cost for maintenance of the lease, I think is how to phrase that.
It's a wet lease with maintenance included.
I thought you were implying that the 3-year lease was 37,000, but it's not.
No, I'm not.
Okay.
No, I'm not.
So you might have been nice to tell us
An
40,000.
outright purchase would be $37,660. If we're purchasing it through a lease, it's the $13,400 a year.
Roseanne and then Russ.
So is there any insurance on the units with the lease if something breaks? Is it covered? Replaced?
You can buy insurance for them.
I don't have
But
it with me here.
it's not factored in.
And then there's no maintenance on them either, if something breaks to fix it?
Like 90 days, that's it, probably. On the educational side, I think it's
Yeah.
90 days.
And what grades will these 30 iPads be used in?
In the high school. I don't think the classes have been determined yet unless principal has more specifics, but I know what we were targeting was English, Math, Social Studies, Science, high school
Will
subjects.
students be allowed to take them home or they stay on premises?
No, they stay on the premises, yeah.
And we do have a tech reserve fund or,
Trust fund?
Yes.
Trust fund?
Technology trust
and
fund.
how much is in that right now?
I don't have that figure with me. That's an, that's
No,
old.
last page, I think.
Yeah,
or
that's
somewhere.
as of-
Let's see,
it's
what
on
page
page
is it on?
53, but that,
Where is it?
it's on page 53.
Right, if you look on the very last page,
49.
53.
It's 50
49.
grand in it.
Yeah.
Can't we utilize some of that towards this?
Well, we really try to use that for emergency purposes. You know, if something
said
goes
that last
down,
year, too,
you can
yeah.
spend a lot of money quickly.
So then basically you're asking for dittos, you're putting warrant articles, so you're doing 11,000 for an operating budget number, and then 24,000 for warrant articles. So you have 24, 20, 30, 36, close to $40,000 for warrant articles for tech?
The very top of the page, you can see I gave a breakout, if I had it.
36,000.
36.6, yes.
36,600 for warrant articles.
That's just for the replacement. There's new equipment on the next page.
Yeah, but even that doesn't.
And then what do you have this year? You're asking for a specific warrant article, 36,620, for this equipment on page 41.
For some of the equipment on page 41.
For some
Some
of the
of it.
equipment, as indicated for warrant articles.
Right.
Now, do you also have a separate warrant article, because I don't have them in front of me, for more money to be put from the surplus into the tech trust fund again?
You know, there were some surplus ones, but I'm not sure that technology was on there.
No.
The only ones that I presented to the board was surplus for expansion of school facilities, and then special ed, and then repair and maintenance of school facilities. So technology is not listed on here.
Okay, so you don't have that. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Russ?
Yeah. I'm assuming the new accounting system, if I put a business paradigm to it, would be there's a payback in going to the new accounting system. You said there was going to be more efficiency, et cetera, so that may or may not have a staffing impact, just in a conceptual basis. I'm not trying to tie you down to that now. What is the paradigm for technology and the educational side? Is that also a payback from education, or do you also look at that to make teachers more efficient in the long run by investing in technology and program?
Well, to me, the payback should be greater student learning, greater achievement, and greater readiness for beyond high school, so that they are familiar with how to use technology in a work environment and as a student in post-secondary. The payback in another way, too, is that it, as we all know who use computers, it just opens up a whole world that right now they're not breaking into. There's a whole world of learning opportunities out there that you can get to once you can get out to the internet. And in specifically in the use of iPads in high school, there's an explosion of apps that are on that are really geared towards teaching and learning in high school. So it just opens up so many more avenues of teaching for teachers, opportunities for learning for kids, and prepares them better for college and career. That's how I
Well, I understand, and I was asking because I didn't know if
Yeah.
it provided any efficiency as well over the long run, where teachers can handle larger class sizes with technology, or
I think
less
it's
expensive.
just better teaching and learning. I don't think it's larger class sizes, although, again, we have to remember at our school, I think we do a terrific job of students taking online courses through a couple different avenues that we have for them, but that's not what this is about.
No, I understand.
No.
But that would be a more efficient way to deliver education. On the online class, those things that could be done online, I'm assuming, don't require buildings, may require less
Yeah, well,
administrative support, et
it
cetera.
allows us to offer courses that we couldn't possibly have a teacher for.
I'll also add to ours accountability, just because that was kind of left out. Accountability is a huge benefit to us with the new system that we don't have with the current
Yeah,
system.
and struggling.
more and more high schools are clearly moving in this direction, and iPads appears, or some similar product appears to be the,
Don't get me wrong, I applaud it. The
Yeah.
question over time is, can you afford it? But I applaud it.
yeah, I know,
You have to afford it.
yeah.
Amy?
It segued into where I was going. Why Mac and not Windows? I know on software on the other page, you were mentioning, we seem to have Windows upgrades and that sort of a thing. So why has it been determined that it needs to be the Apple brand for these versus a Windows?
From all of our investigations, they are the predominant, and I mean really predominant, vendor in that market. And what they do is they provide much better work with teachers on training, and it's just they dominate.
Targeted the teaching
They
community
just
20 years
dominate
ago.
the education environment.
Even with the iPads where it's so app-based that isn't an app?
Yes, I mean, to give you an example, a year ago, I went to the technology conference that they put on here in the state, and there was very little there was some about one-to-one in general, but some of it was laptop, and some of it was iPad, but not a lot. This year's agenda was just swallowed up by one-to-one projects that are going on in schools, and it was almost all iPad oriented. So it
Well,
just-
and if it has to be the Apple product versus X brand pad, whatever.
Yeah.
Even just sitting here briefly, getting pricing, I understand that there is lease cost, which brings your total up $2,500
Right.
to administer a lease, which I'm not sure is entirely smart, but even the base price of $37,660, 10 MacBook Airs at $1,312, and again, I'm just looking at these numbers, but I just got a price in about 3 seconds online of $950 each. And the iPads, I came at $359, so I would hope that these numbers would be able to be tightened up a little bit before it's presented in the
Well,
form
these
of a
are-
warrant article. Just a
I hear you. Okay.
recommendation.
Yep, okay.
Okay?
How many mobile laptop carts are in the elementary school right now?
One, I think. All right. Well, good, come on up, describe, yeah.
It's one, but it's been, it's not being used by students because because of so many laptops being essentially rendered unusable, we've been having our staff use those laptops. One of my big pushes is using technology to be way more efficient about our communication structures. That requires teachers to have access to computers that can access the internet and can access an email in less than 10 minutes. And we've done that. What that's allowed us to do is spend our time together, not going over announcements and, hey, remember that, next Thursday is the blah, blah, blah event. But we've actually been able to spend our time on instruction and focusing on preparing for the Common Core, which is forthcoming.
There's currently not one that's available for the students or being used.
No, apparently.
I thought there was one in the budget last year that was approved to be bought.
I think there was one, what he said, what I hear Tom saying is, again, he had staff with such outdated equipment.
Well, wait a minute. In the budget you're currently in this year, I think there's money for one to be bought.
I thought there was. Yeah.
We definitely discussed mobile laptop carts last year.
Okay.
Yep.
So,
That wasn't part of the cut.
Was it coming
I
from
don't know.
another fund, though?
no, it was because we discussed it as
Whole separate
operational budget
I don't know,
cost.
I'll look it up, Brian, I can't.
I don't have
I
last year's
remember it, but
information
I
with me.
can't account
Maybe
for
someone
it.
else does, but anybody else have last year's packet with them?
That's the.
That was
Well, I don't know, you know.
But
I
there
haven't
was
put it in memory yet.
there's a whole bunch of that I believe was
Question
funded,
or
yes.
Brian, I haven't.
So, hold on.
I have a question.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
All right, so you look into that and get back
Yes,
to
I
us?
will, yeah.
Dana and then Russ?
Yeah, we had this conversation last year, and I just want to alert people that, yes, you can go online, you can get a cheaper product, but what you're going to get is the product you see. Versus on the educational side, having been a Apple executive rep for the University, New Hampshire, Keene, and Plymouth, that behind the product you buy from Apple, you're going to get technical support. You're going to get all of that support, and it's included in the price, maybe $1,300. But if you need a number, you need to talk to someone, there's somebody there. So it's kind of, you know, when you go to Circuit City, you buy a laptop, you're going to get the geek crew that's going to help you solve some of your problems, but you're going to get what you pay for. The same here. You pay a little bit more money, but you're going to get that technical support. In addition to leasing them versus purchasing them, if you're going to purchase 25 devices here for 3 years, technology changes so quickly, you don't want to be left at the end of the contract holding technology that's 3 years old, plus what you're going to have with the kids banging it, abusing it, and everything else in the same process. Not that they would destroy it, but, you know, there's use there. So at the end of the year, you're stuck with that, or you turn it over the lease, and will they buy some of these computers back? No, they're leased, so they don't have to buy them.
But it's
So-
apps-based, it's not the software, there's not the hardware update that we're talking about, it's not with an iPad.
You still need technical support.
You do, and there's a lot of
And that's
other
what you're
ways,
paying
there's
for.
a lot of other ways to do that based on quantity
No,
discount.
not
is
if
all
you
I'm-
want that good quality
I beg to
educational
differ.
support.
Okay, all right.
Having been there, that's why I'm saying that.
Russ?
Yeah, to that point, I don't have the answer. I'll ask you guys. There's a lease buy decision. I was in the leasing business for many years. And for those people who generally don't understand it, in the real world, there's a user and a seller. When you have a leasing company, you have 3 people involved, and there are more people who want to make a profit. So unless you're planning on spinning technology every 2 years and sticking it back to the leasing company, which would wake up and charge you more for that, if you're keeping equipment for 7, 10 years, then purchasing equipment, okay, is a much more rational way to go than leasing it in general. If you're going to spin the equipment in 2 or 3 years and get the new and best car, that's the best way to go. I understand Dana's point on technical support, but I just wondered what your lease buy decision is. If it is to get it into the operating budget so you don't have to use capital, which many firms do, okay, to say it's only $13,000 this year instead of a $40,000 purchase, depreciated over 5 years. That's all I'm asking. And is it the right decision? On one hand, you say you have 7 to 10 year equipment that you're using, and on the other hand, you're saying you're going into a 3-year lease, which gets me scared that you're going to be paying for that equipment 5 times by the time it's over.
Well, I think at the end of the 3 years, we have the option to either buy them out, or,
Paying more.
I think it's for $1.
You can renew.
Or trade them in, and that's why they do a 3-year, because they say after 3 years, it still has some trade-in value.
Are they
So
dollar?
After 3 years, forget it, and so that's why, because
Yeah.
at first I asked, gee, how about a 4-year lease? I said, no, don't go there, here's why, so.
Well, if they're dollar, and it's my point to Amy, and I'm not saying I know the answer, if they're all dollar purchase option leases, which means you're buying the equipment in 3 years for $1, that's fine, okay? I can understand spreading the cost. If you're taking a fair market value lease, where you're paying a lease rate for 3 years, and then fair market value for that machine is going to be determined 3 years from now, it's a much bigger risk, and I don't know the structures you
That's
have.
not the case.
Again, I'm not saying I have the answer, but I do know the structures. So I'd like to understand what the end of lease structures and the return and maintenance
got
provisions are
950,
on
so
those,
better.
just to see if it makes sense financially based on your holding equipment these days.
Can you just make sure that when we meet again, that there's better information about what is this cost? Like $458 for the iPad, is it just the iPad, or is it the iPad?
Yeah, I
with
wrote
this
myself a
fancy
note to actually
protector
take,
thing, so when
I'll get you a
drop it,
copy of the
doesn't-
quote, so it's all described in that.
I know my brothers.
All right, are we good on page 41? And you also try to get the information about how many laptop carts are.
You mean, are we good with the
Yeah,
information
for
we've
this
gotten,
year.
or are we good with the budget?
I don't think you've
Is that a motion, Gary?
Anytime you want one, Brian.
No, you know what it is? You know, we went through this earlier this year with some cameras, I think. You know, I think,
With some what?
they were looking for some video equipment. And you know, some of the prices were a little bit higher then, and, you know, I understand the school needs product, and I think the school should get what it needs. I think it's, you know, particularly in this day and age, that it should, you know, it should be as aggressive as possible, particularly with commodity items like these. These are commodities, you know. Anyway,
Yep.
I think that's the point
I understand.
we're making.
And the state has no buying program?
Is it a $300, you know, piece at a pop, just to make a point? At 10 units, just using a round number, you're talking about $3,000, which could be, you know, potentially another 3 or 4 pieces, you know, depending upon what, you know, and if you aggregate that up and down the line.
But there's, again, what's behind the equipment is a very well-developed world of educational applications and uses and best practice that's already there.
Right, but I don't think you're hearing
But you're
disagreement
not
about
paying for
Apple,
that with the
but
lease.
you're hearing disagreement that at $458 you can probably get the same exact thing for $399 from Best Buy. That's what we don't understand.
I understand.
That's
You-
what I'm bringing up.
I
I'm
get
not
that.
bringing-
No, I get that, and you need to see.
You're just looking the most efficient way to use and acquire the equipment.
There you go.
Oh,
Go
you'll
do it.
understand.
Pay for it, that's the whole
Credit
problem.
card.
When we make the purchase, we'll be doing an RFP.
Yeah, but you're not getting the software
No,
through.
no, and that's, you know, part of,
You're not getting it.
you know, we're not
That's
micromanaging,
the question.
saying whether you need an air book or you need a different one.
Right.
I mean,
Just get the best price.
I could do that, but I
understand.
don't choose to do that. That's not my role.
Yeah.
But I do think we have a right to expect, you know, an aggressive RFP.
I agree.
And it maybe it's the way you present it is not 10, it's we hope to buy a minimum of 10 and up to 15. And the prices currently are this range. But we're going to put it out to bid.
Gotta sell it.
To the point, the
Can sell it.
telephone lease that's costing us, these need to be,
Yeah, that has.
I'm,
Yeah, I get
was
that.
in the bit-
Ouch. All right, page 42.
Page 42. There's a lot of narrative here, but very simply, it's to replace outdated equipment in 3 aspects: the elementary computer lab, the at the high school classroom computers, as well as computers in our science labs and in the CAD classroom, and then teacher laptops. And you can see the breakout both at the bottom of page 42. And again, what principals were asking for was more than I felt the budget could bear. So separated some of it out through a technology warrant article. And these amounts would be combined with what was on the previous page, so it's really just one warrant article. And again, we're purchasing laptops and and desktop computers, and just trying to maximize our ability to get with more state-of-the-art equipment.
I believe when we did the tour, we walked in the computer lab in the elementary school, and every computer, well, if I remember, they all had like the disk drives, which
Floppies.
3 1/4
Yes.
floppies.
at least they weren't 5.5.
If you haven't,
Oh, my God.
5 1/4,
you
come
haven't-
on,
you
5
wanna come and see
1/4.
one,
Yeah.
yes.
No, but I'm just
know.
saying that is a demonstration of how old they are.
Oh, yeah.
That's right.
They make
Exactly
smaller than
right.
5 1/4?
You got an Apple iBook, come on, or something like that.
Yeah, I do. It doesn't talk to you.
So, I mean, I think we need to upgrade that stuff because
Yeah, we're in,
Floppy drive, I would say so. You might want to send those to the Smithsonian. It might be.
as long as it's not one of those flexible,
Yeah.
5 1/4,
I
right?
know. Yeah.
no, but I mean, you know, for my organization, the computer I had has that, and we worked it for 7 years. So I think it makes sense to stretch it, but there's a point where
It's
the
time.
performance
Yeah.
suffers and everything suffers.
And now that when the infrastructure was just a problem for people, it was less of an issue. But now that we're solving those problems, people want to engage technology in their classrooms.
I know you get those for the endorphins.
Yeah, go ahead, Amy.
I would just say my challenge to you is the same as on page 41. I'd like to see a tighter number come
Okay.
out to, particularly on the warrant article, not to mention on the RFP, but you've got a better chance of selling it,
Okay.
okay? Sell it hard.
And this looks like that page 42 continues from 43 with the same summary of needs.
Right.
Just
Yeah,
different-
42 and
different-
43. One's elementary and the other's junior, senior high school, but it's the same, pressing needs.
Yeah, it was kind of combining my comment for both pages, for all technology warrant articles, please.
Okay, so we hit the two major things that were on your list. Do you want to open up it? I was going to say Pandora's box, but
You know, I have lots of stamina, but I think you wanted to end at 9, right?
Well, part of it is the learning curve too, that it's always tougher getting the first one down. That my feeling is, I think that whenever we do it, high school is
All right.
going to go a little bit, just because I think
Yeah.
we're gonna have more information on how it's working,
Yep.
whether we do it tonight or not. I've made no recommendation there.
I'll leave it to the committee. I mean, there was, I don't know, Jim, you passed out the revenue sheet. Maybe we should talk about that. And or Christine did. And then if there's any other things from the information that was given that I forwarded from email that you provided us and answered our questions, maybe we should give everybody a chance to ask any questions about that and use the next 15 minutes to do that. Well, I mean, we
rest of
can,
them, or whenever
warrant
they're
articles are
ready?
going to be in January.
Okay,
Because we
sorry.
want to give them time to make decisions. The school board
Right.
hasn't even made decisions about what they
No, they haven't, but I just
Gotcha.
wanted you to get
Thank
the
you.
whole technology picture, that's all.
Thank
Do you
you.
have that revenue sheet?
It was on our desk.
Should be on.
I don't know how much detail you want me to go in.
Here's the extra one. It would be helpful, I think, to do that because it already came up earlier from Russ about, so wait till everybody gets it out.
Well, I can point things out that have changed. I mean, you can see if you go through that, these are just revenues for the operating budget only, okay? So adequacy grant is gonna stay the same. If you just look at, let me back up. Let me just do it this way first, and then I'll answer questions. State sources, roughly, you can see it's within a couple $1,000s. Federal sources is within $5,000. The local sources down below, again, $1,000. And then if you look at the non-tax revenues, that's all of our local revenues that would go for the tuitions that we receive. And then the district assessment, that's what we'd have to raise from taxes. That's the taxation number. If we were to use the current budget, what we proposed, okay, that's just a starting ground. State education taxes are going down. That is, I'm sure you've seen it on your taxes. We have a local and the state. That's the SWEP, the statewide property education tax. That's going down by about $65,000. And then that's what our grand total revenues are for the year. I will point out, however, that the tuitions for regular, do you see where I'm at? Down below, under local sources?
Yep.
See the decrease?
Yeah.
Okay, that is because we have more we have students with special needs. We have a higher increase enrollment, therefore that we can only accept fewer regular tuition students.
For pre-K or
Correct.
for, okay.
Oh.
That's the pretty much the swinging factor difference between last year's and current year's. Oh, sorry.
Can you help explain why the federal grants were so much higher in 2011 and 12? I'm pretty sure we didn't budget that because I think we've budgeted $450 every year I've been involved for federal grants.
We do. Why were they higher?
Well, yeah, how do we suddenly get 180,000 more?
That could be.
Is that cat?
No,
stuff?
Cat 8 is above. Cat 8 is up in
Oh,
the
I see
state
that, yeah.
sources, and that's actually going down a little
Did it
bit.
have to do something with food stamps or income ratio or something like that? Is that part of the measurement?
It's
I guess the question is, it's such a wild card that if it went the other way, it would really hurt.
It does, and it's a real hard number to grasp because they're changing. Like for example, the Cat Aid, the state education adequacy aid is changing the calculation for next year, so that's why I budgeted the same amount that we currently have, because that's going to change. The ADM that they're going to use is going to be current year ADM, and it'll take
What's
a
ADM?
Sorry.
I thought that
Average
face
daily-
was saying that, but
Sorry.
It's okay.
I'm just like,
Buy
on
you
the
a
go.
Coke.
ADM.
It's average daily membership.
Okay.
Okay, so what it was using was previous year, so it was currently using the FY 11-12 year. Now going forward in the new year, it's going to use the FY 12-13 year. Well, because those numbers don't come out until October, we're going to see a rate change or a funding change in April of next year. Okay, so we're gonna have, it's gonna be, our funding's gonna be decreased essentially, which is gonna happen. That's the bottom line. So the grants are a really hard number to throw and make it stick because we never know. And obviously, I don't want to put myself into a predicament where I could have a deficit because I overestimated.
So the question that everybody would ask is if you budgeted 690 for those federal sources and we came in at 800, there isn't another $110,000 the school board can spend. It's $110,000 that gets returned to the taxpayer.
Not necessarily. The school board can hold a special meeting and request it, and request to use those funds.
Or warrant articles.
And that's part of one of the warrant articles that we have.
Can do what? What was the first part? You
We
said,
can hold a special public hearing
yeah.
to request to the taxpayers that we use those funds for a special purpose, whatever we would need those funds to use for. But we have a warrant article that would allow us to do that.
And what's the process? You said public hearing. Do you mean another vote of the town or just a public hearing and then a vote of the school board?
Just a public hearing and vote of school board.
But have we done that in any time recently?
No.
Okay.
And that's one of the warrant articles that we have, which is warrant article, where is it? Yeah, where is it?
That's okay. I'm just trying to understand. Historically, let me just say this then. Historically, if the federal revenues have been higher, without that warrant
Article
article,
13,
the impact would be that there would be money going back
Typi-
to reduce the tax rate for the next year.
Correct.
Which is what
That's-
people want to hear.
Correct.
Because if the numbers are so hard to predict, there's going to be some people who are going to be suspicious that they're being under budgeted on purpose in order to then allow what you just said to happen.
Right.
And I'm not suggesting that, but you know there's going to be people
I
that say that.
understand that that could be,
So I think,
Perceived, but I can tell
especially
you-
when you look at the year before, where it's almost $300,000 higher came in. So just refine and make sure you're really
That's a good
comfortable with
point.
this and justifiable, because we need to have numbers that people understand, and if it's going to change, sometimes there's a really good explanation, like we had more people on reduced lunch, free and lunch, and therefore we got more food and nutrition funds, because that's actually what the explanation was 2 years
I
ago.
think that was ARA funds
Okay.
we got. Yeah.
Oh, that's right, we did have
Yeah, that's
a
right.
bunch of
We
money.
got a chunk of money for ARA funds.
So I would put in there ARA and put the line item that's associated with it and not keep it bunched like this. Or ARA associated, because otherwise it's just harder to understand.
The whole breakdown.
So they got American Recovery Act.
Oh, we definitely did, I remember
I mean,
that.
the town.
and there's
the
part of it is
school.
ed
School.
jobs is in there too.
Yeah, ed
Where'd you
jobs.
get it
Ed
from?
jobs is in there.
For some of the special education stuff.
But that comes up, I mean, like, again, like, for example, if we didn't have this warrant article for ed jobs, that came in after our budget was approved. So we technically don't have the authorization to spend it.
Well, wait, no, that's not, you have the authorization to spend the bottom line. The authorization does not care where the money comes from. So if you don't get any federal money, you can still spend it.
Yes, that's true.
So,
And you offset expenditures in the operating budget.
and if you don't get this, say you don't get any federal funds, $690,000, then you would either have to raise the tax rate by $1, or the school board's gonna cut the budget by $690,000. And I bet it's the latter, or closer to the latter, because,
Cutting?
well, because if you lose the federal funds, the people voted on a budget based
No,
on
I
a
just
certain
want a
inflation.
clarification of where you were.
That's what I'm saying.
That makes
I don't
sense,
have the
yeah.
authorization to.
Good point.
Okay,
I had a-
so we're on the same page? Okay. I just want to, Russ?
And I think this, I mean, you guys have said to us, and I know Brian has before, the state and the federal government are cutting back, okay? This looks like it's a $400,000 or $500,000 reduction over the past couple of years. And it seems to me transfer from capital reserves, all that says is we are paying more. Okay, because the capital reserves is us, is it not? It's not somebody else's capital reserves, it's the capital reserves the school board has, which it gets from taxes. Okay, so that is a tax item, it just happens to be a prior tax item that's been put into the capital reserve. And I agree with Brian, the other issue I'm struggling with, just for better education, is you put together a budget and then you don't find out until after the budget what your funding is. Okay? So as a budget committee, how are we supposed to respond to that? You'll have to educate us over time, because I'm tempted to say, if I don't know the revenue's gonna be there, then cut the expense now. Okay, rather than finding out 3 months from now that we just approved a budget that increased the tax rate twice as much as we thought we did because we didn't get the funding. Those are the things I'm trying to struggle with, trying to put together in a way that gives us some confidence and knowledge of what we're doing. And it seems, please excuse my French, to be asked backwards to a certain extent. And that's frustrating. I'm not blaming you guys, it's just frustrating.
Go ahead.
And you're absolutely right, and so the reality is, past practice has been to assume, historical numbers, and then there's certainly a grapevine that, information that leaks to the districts to say, okay, expect, X increase or X decrease, and so business administrators are kind of, okay, well, here's historically how it's been. This is what I'm hearing from, different sources out there. So here's my best guesstimate. And it stinks, but it's the way that it's
It is reality.
standard operating procedure for.
I understand. So I'm understanding it correctly.
You got it.
That's good.
You
That's
got
all I
it.
want to do first.
Which asks the question of the state, why do you do it that way?
Amy?
I'm going to throw this out there, maybe, and I think I think it ties in with all of this, where everything is kind of a best guess. You want to best guess our revenues, we want to best guess our expenses based on historicals and all of that. And I think that then what throws a further monkey wrench in it for me is any warrant articles that talk about what do we do if there's an anticipated surplus. Because now, to me, we're shooting a hole in, well, my budget's real lean, or our revenues are down, or whatever, that it seems to me we should try to settle as much as we possibly can. I mean, I get that we want to obviously fund capital reserve accounts, but, any projected surplus based on, okay, we've got X amount of expenses, if I just look at the proposed budget right now, and our revenues are down, any talk to me as far as what to do with surpluses is superfluous, other than going back to the tax rolls. And I think, I'm not arguing, I'm just saying, yeah, that's what confounds a lot of this, is trying to tighten it up as best we can, and kind of not putting the cart before the horse as far as any anticipated surpluses. If we do our job as best we can, ideally we plan for most things right out the gate.
And Brian, can I just?
Yeah, sure.
And the reality has been, been on the board for like 9 years now. Generally speaking, surplus has been due to unanticipated revenues that, for so many different reasons, suddenly we're eligible for things that we weren't eligible for last year or whatever. So
Or the roof, for instance, the savings on that. I mean, that's, right.
Yeah, it's
Recall what
Medicare, things
gave
like
us
that.
1 year.
So,
Right.
so generally speaking, surplus has been because of unanticipated revenue, not
Right.
because, with the exception of something like the fire sprinklers, which actually, that warrant article was crafted so that, it would not go to the fund balance, it would go.
Right, and maybe that's a better way to do a lot of them, in a way, so that you say, okay, this isn't, I don't know, I don't have any answers, I'm just,
And-
I'm just throwing it out there.
The only way it doesn't go to the fund balance and go back to the tax rate reduction is if the warrant articles that distribute it pass.
Right,
Right.
Right.
So what
So
we
the
try to
voters
do is
are
give
making a decision.
give voters that decision. Do you want it back?
Right.
Do you want it to reduce the rate, or do you want us to be able to sock it away for emergencies
need.
down the road?
Which
So-
is fair, and I think I'm backing it up more, where if we, and that's, I think what I've been kind of on my mission tonight or something, is to say, okay, well, if there's any projected health insurance we can show, or any projected equipment savings, or anything to tighten up, let's get it down, as much as we reasonably can. So again, we're not looking at, oh, well, we threw a $500,000 number in there, but we really think it's going to be $250, and have this big chunk of change that's out there, out of pocket and potentially coming back in. I just think There's got to be a tighter way to do it, and maybe that's what we've been doing.
I'll speak from my own experience within my profession that the feds, as people have probably realized by now, every year the budget's delayed, the decisions that impact the distribution of the funds are delayed, and the rules change, and suddenly what you told the landowner you're working with is no longer the case, and in this case,
Right. I think we all go through that.
never,
We
it's
certainly
constantly
all go through
evolving
that.
situations.
That's right. Okay, good on that one.
I'm
Is that a good place?
I
think so.
personally, it's fine with me. I
Anything else
appreciate
on?
this, some staff here from other aspects of the district that I haven't, maybe didn't feel like they needed to be here after sitting here for 2.5 hours. but-
Well, there were pieces of
It's
their
fine,
interests
it's
are
Yeah,
in
yeah,
here, they just
the-
didn't
the-
speak.
The technology, yeah.
Oh, is that why they're here? They're not here to speak separately to their own budgets, or?
No,
Oh, okay.
no, I am, but they fill in gaps or whatever, but they're hearing,
That's your support.
they're
now.
hearing things that they put in the budget. Not me.
All right. No, I was
Yeah.
trying to refer to
One
Brian. I
more
didn't know
thing,
if
I
they were
need
here.
to go back to the beginning because
No,
I
you're
forgot.
not.
Okay, Amy, go
I
ahead.
apologize, Dr. Hayes. I know in the beginning you addressed briefly, and I don't want to, I just am looking for more information. An RFP went out to Oyster River to continue talks.
We did not issue any RFP.
No RFP, okay, but they said they would take 9 to 12, and
They-
their board agreed to continue talking with us and us with them.
For
Somewhere else.
high school only.
Yeah, agreed.
That's
Okay,
correct.
and that was where it is, so
That is-
it's again, still ongoing.
As where it stands, and I'm trying to set up meetings in January.
Thank you, I apologize.
It's all right.
Is there any reason why you did not put an RFP out to them, like Barrington? Did Barrington put one
Two
out?
RFPs, do you?
I didn't see a need. Barrington is already in a tuition agreement with them.
With them,
They-
okay.
That's a very different circumstance than ours. Ours is,
So if they accept Barrington's RFP, that's not going to eliminate us for numbers, because they're already there.
no, I would say that if they accepted Newmarket students, that would push their enrollment up to their ceiling, their maximum.
With
And that would be
Barrington already included?
without Barrington.
Oh, without Barrington.
So that would put Barrington out
Let's go to
shopping.
Dover.
That would put Barrington out,
Okay.
yes.
So it's either, they can either take Barrington or Newmarket, they can't.
Or Deerfield.
They're talking with Deerfield. Deerfield has somewhere near 200 students, 180 to 200. So,
They already do have a place
yeah.
to go.
But for us, it was much more about, and it's going to continue to be, to me, I think, in this next stage of talks, about the number of students we have plus the number that are Oyster River students, not Barrington. And it pushes their maximum, their desired maximum capacity right up to the ceiling. And I think that's, to me, and I've said that to the superintendent, I think that is certainly, there are other key questions, but that's a key one right from the beginning we need to get answered.
I thought the lady that did the long-range planning was very good. That was an
She was,
amazing level
you
of
saw that.
detail.
Oh,
I
she's
did.
tremendous. I
I
thought so,
did,
yeah.
so she could. I
Yes.
was watching the Oyster River School Board meeting, the last one, and Dr. Hayes was in the audience, and they do much more detailed student population, and actually everybody population,
Well,
parent population, and who's having kids.
She spent a lot of
and-
time working
She
off of the
did.
census data.
Yeah, and
Really
she
dug
went
into
through this
that.
whole thing, and she talked about how from the 2000 to 2010, they've dropped 443 students from their maximum.
Yeah,
They were at
it's quite a few.
2393 or something like that.
Yeah.
They're down 443, and they think over the next 10 years, it's gonna go down another 350. And then, there's less people of childbearing age, therefore having less kids. I mean, they went into stuff.
Very
that-
nice- very
Is
nice
it the NEASC
presentation.
reports? I get the acronyms. Who gives the most school districts their projections? Is it-
NESDEC.
NESDEC,
New England
sorry.
School, it used to be New England School Development Council, now I think they just
Okay.
call themselves
And
NESDEC.
she just went through
great.
demographics like
Yeah, it was terrific, yeah.
crazy.
That was, if you,
So-
Dan, if you're interested, that was December 5th, Oyster River School Board
Okay,
meeting.
is that what it was?
Yeah, so it's gonna
And
be
they probably
interesting to see
broadcast
how
it
those
off their
projections
website, I
go.
bet.
Yeah, it's on their website.
Probably on the website, yeah. I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Oh, wait, did we discuss
Next meeting?
Wednesday's meeting, next meeting?
Nope.
Nope, I'm ready for Wednesday.
So, Roseanne, if you might as well speak to your concern or question.
My concern is that we have members on this board that are from different boards and committees, Linda from the school board and Mr. Levy from the town council. And I just don't think it's appropriate to schedule meetings that are in direct conflict with any board member, required meetings as an elected official. And I think we should have our meetings so that we don't want to ask an elected official to prioritize and choose between which meeting they should go to.
We're all elected.
I'm talking about members that are appointed from other committees, such as town council and school board. They're put on the.
What about the people who call and say they're going to be sick? We don't change the meeting for them.
No, because that's a personal thing, Dana. If you have anything coming up that's personal, that is something that we can't change in this board, that is sporadic and it's not able to be projected. We have projected meetings for school board, we have projected meetings, we know when they occur, and we should make every attempt to have those people.
And I think this board does that when it has the opportunity to do that.
It should be done at all times. We should not.
There's not every opportunity you can do that, Roseanne.
Okay.
Dana, I'm not here to argue, I'm here to
Well-
make a statement.
Okay.
And if you want to make a statement, you wait your turn when I'm done talking. Thank you. So I would like to hear other board members, or if not, just make a motion. I feel that the December 19th meeting should be changed so that all members can make it, and it wouldn't be a conflict with.
Are you making a motion, Liz?
I would like to make a motion to that we do not
Is there a
have a
second?
meeting.
Second that, I think that's fair.
So I'll just have to speak to this because we discussed this at the last meeting, and as I
thought it was
explained,
settled.
it was difficult to find a date that people couldn't make it, and Mr. Levy I knew couldn't make it, but we knew we'd be done with the school, the town portion at that point. And traditionally, the role of the representative from the different board was to be able to advocate for and explain and answer aspects of their budget. So I
There are also voting members too, right?
but we're,
But we're not
yes,
voting.
unless someone wants to make a motion, we're not voting. There's going to be nights when we can't make it. The next night, Thursday, is a school board meeting. Tomorrow night, I can't make it. I've already missed one meeting, and scheduling it for a night I knew I can't make it didn't seem fair to myself. And we didn't even offer the date as a date for everybody else. The 18th wasn't even on the list of dates.
Why? Because you couldn't make it.
Somebody.
I couldn't make it, yeah.
So,
But
and
nobody
why,
asked
and
for
may I ask why you can't make it?
I have a work obligation.
A work obligation. Okay. Now that to
So
me.
Roseanne,
But no,
Roseanne,
no,
you know
that
what?
to me
Ros-
is something personal.
No, actually, Roseanne, I'm an elected official of the Budget Committee as well. So I don't know what that has to do with anything. We're just going to have to, people are going to have to make a decision because we have 3 meetings left, this one and a 2 in January, to finish the high school, the SAU, wrap up the revenue discussion and warrant articles,
And the warrant article.
and then be ready for the public hearing.
I thought we had already agreed to at least 3 meetings in January, and we may need more. I'm not saying.
We did
we'll
not,
finish
we
it.
didn't, we scheduled the 7th and 8th. We did not agree to any other dates.
And the
That's the public hearing. We sit there and listen
Yeah.
and maybe explain things. All right, so anyone else is welcome to speak to the motion?
I'd just like to say one thing. You know, originally because I don't like missing a meeting if I don't have to, and I've tried not to miss any meetings since I've been on the council. And originally, when we set the schedule, we were going to meet on Saturday, which was last Saturday and the previous Monday. And then the Saturday got bumped, and then we scheduled this Monday and Wednesday, and I think at the time I voiced, and it would be very easy for me just to say, you know, the heck with it, I don't have to go, but I'd rather not do that. And so Saturday was determined not to come, which is fine. That was what the board decided to do. But frankly, I think it's unusual to not have someone from the council or the school board who has a meeting on those nights put in that position. That's all I'll say about it. I don't think it's appropriate.
Right. how about everybody speak once and we're done? Because really, we have already done this once. And we did it as a group. It wasn't Brian laying down the law. Drew?
Yeah, my take on it, my preference would be for all members to be here. The reality is, most of our meetings, at least one person's not here. It's unfortunate, Gary, in this case, that you're not going to be able to make the meeting. But I don't know what to say.
I can't
When
change
when the committee was asked on the whole, that was the best date. I'm going to vote in support of a meeting on Wednesday night. I think we have a lot to do, and I think trying to cancel it pushes a lot into January, and that makes me nervous.
Russ and Linda?
From a personal thing, we decided on a schedule that included a Saturday. I made my plans. When that was changed, now I can't attend the next meeting because Saturday was canceled where I was willing to give all day to. And I made arrangements based on the original plan. I feel bad about not making the Wednesday meeting, but I understand Gary and Linda's point. It's personal to me, and I recognize it's giving up a weekend day. I would have had no problem working for 4 to 6 hours on Saturday or some Saturday in the future, so we don't create a conflict. I know that may be a burden on other members, but I'd rather have everybody here who wants to be here.
First of all, I want to say, I was planning on being here Saturday, but when we talked about it and said, for a 2-hour meeting, I think I mentioned that, Christine had an over an hour drive, so, for 2 hours, yeah, maybe, I wasn't opposed to changing it. I think it really, I do think it stinks that, that Gary can't be here. I guess, again, having been serving on so many different committees for so long now, this happens every year with someone not being, so it really stinks, and I think in the future we really need to avoid doing this. However, we're really pressed up against it now in terms of the calendar is ticking away, and I just feel like we've got to commit to, we had the opportunity to set these schedules, and I think we just need to stick with it because we've got to get through this. But it does stink, and in the future, I hope we don't do this again.
Is everybody able to make the 7th and 8th that we have? And then, I mean, whatever happens here, the commitment from the chair is that when we do the meeting where we're going to be voting, there'll be a commitment that everybody can make it. And that is scheduled for, well, there'll be a commitment that we will offer dates that we can meet, and the vast majority of people will be able to make it because that's the fairest thing. But I can't commit that everybody can make it because who knows what your guys' schedules are like in January. I mean, that's not,
Priority, that's what I'm planning.
and we'll set it as a group when we meet in January.
There's a motion on the table.
Yeah.
But to that motion, and
Go ahead and read off the next, Roseanne.
if the 7th, if the 14th is the public meeting where we listen.
Yes.
Okay. We need to reach our conclusions, we're saying, by the 7th and the 8th.
No. Why do I have to
Okay.
keep explaining this?
No?
The 7th and 8th are more information. The 14th is the public hearing to receive input. Historically, while there's no rule that says this, we don't make a decision until after the public hearing. We have historically done it the same night, but given that it's a joint public hearing, we might be there for 2 hours, or maybe not, listening to comments. We might decide to meet again. We have to do that meeting between the 15th and the 26th or so that we give the school district and the town the chance to post the actual warrant because it has the number that we decide on.
I thought we said the 15th is when the vote needed to be taken last.
So the 15th is when the public hearing has to happen by.
And then we need to be able to have a vote by the 26th or the 27th.
Yeah, like the warrant has to be posted the 28th, so we don't want to make the decision the 28th because
Okay.
they have to run around to 2 different locations and that's not fair to everybody. So does that help?
Oh, yeah, I'm just saying, I'm willing to spend whatever time we need to get to the point where we don't get jammed up againce dates
Yeah.
after the
Forget
new
what
year.
we just talked about tonight. I don't want to forget all the learning we
So
just
I can, once we're done, Roseanne, you'll speak next. I just want to say, I can send out another doodle poll or whatever for some dates in January so that people can respond now. So it's on the calendar for a couple weeks.
So are we giving up 7 and 8 dates?
No.
Okay, no.
I'm assuming we're not going to meet on the 14th to
thinking
vote,
now,
that we'll
no.
have the public
We have to
hearing.
vote after.
And then we'll have another meeting, and if we vote that night, great, we don't have to have that meeting, but at least we have
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, but
Okay.
that makes sense.
So go ahead,
It
Rita.
does
So,
make sense,
so
yeah.
can somebody, you had mentioned we changed our Saturday meeting to a 2-hour meeting. Can someone refresh my memory as to why we did that? It was.
I have no idea. It was just
a.
a,
It was on the original schedule.
Well, we kind of had talked about it Saturday, but some people were like, it should be short, 2 hours would be great, and we never really set the specific
I thought
time
it was
for it.
2 hours because you had family visiting.
In part, I said that's a
And I
bad
had to
weekend
go
for
to
me
work.
because I had
And time
families.
you had to work.
And then Gary said he had work,
Yeah.
and
So
I heard multiple
January
people.
7th and 8th is a Monday and a Tuesday night.
Correct.
Okay, all right.
and the
So,
14th is the next Monday.
you know, I just think we should accommodate these people that are on all these boards and committees.
So, anyone else like to speak that hasn't spoken? Ellen, did you want to add anything?
Just to say that I think we're kind of in a bind now because of our timing, and I'm not sure how we'd find another date besides the 19th. I appreciate Gary's situation, but I do think in the future that we should do whatever we can to avoid other committee nights. I mean, I would agree with that.
We can't do a Thursday night, the school board meeting.
Yeah. So there's school board, there's conservation, there's
so not
whoever-
only would I not be able to be here, the superintendent and the business administrator wouldn't be able to be here, so.
The presenters
That's the
would be-
time we should vote on the school.
You want everything?
All right, so, let's see, all
I
those,
just want to say one thing, Brian, if I could. I want to apologize to Gary because I did come across to him sharp, but the date was set last week. Oh,
you
the
should
week.
stop at the apology and
Yeah.
not do the
Yeah,
vote.
yeah, just, yeah.
No, that's all why I'm saying that. is
My
because
wife
of-
says that to me too.
Yeah, I mean, you can roll your eyes, Gary, I don't really care, but I did make the apology,
Okay.
so.
So, all those in favor of the motion, which was to not have the meeting on
Not
Wednesday
have
night?
the meeting this
There wasn't any
Wednesday.
okay. Not have the meeting
Next
to,
one.
if the motion passes, we will not have a meeting Wednesday night. So it's clear. All those in favor say aye. Or raise your.
Aye.
Okay. Opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
Not voting? Russ is not
actually-
voting.
Does this make it a tie?
No, it
Make a
doesn't.
motion to
It's
adjourn.
5 to 3,
I'll
3 to
second
5
it.
to 1, or something like that.
Gary made a motion to adjourn, I seconded it.
All those in favor?
Wednesday.
Yes.
Adios.
Have a good night. Thank you, everybody.
Very nice.
Thank you.
Aye.